Chapter 775. Han Dong did not pay too much attention to the unpleasant conversation with Stalvin. All in all, he was quite grateful to the Knights of Destiny for this assessment. If it were not for them, Han Dong would not have had the opportunity to deepen his understanding of death. In this way, Han Dong had completely established his identity as a close combat mage, and would inevitably shine in the Great Expedition. The specific arrangements for the Great Expedition would depend on the higher-up. The eve of the expedition, the final stage. All the knights selected for the expeditionary army would be assigned to different legions according to their respective attributes and characteristics. During this period, there was also the interval of 3 months. This period was mainly used to adjust the status of the expeditionary army members. Most of the knights who had just left Tal prison had accumulated a large amount of pollutants and negative pressure in their bodies. At least in the next half a month, all the churches and sanctuaries in the Holy City would be in a state of full capacity. Currently, the clockwork communication device worn on Han Dong's wrist was full of unread information. Among them, Mia's information was the most. After all, Han Dong did not leave the prison with the main group. Although they knew that Han Dong would be fine, they were still a little worried. After the 5 of them gathered, they used the network in Dempsey's hands. Everyone was arranged to go to an unofficial, simple church located in the civilian area for a simple holy light baptism and pressure release. Abel's dragon blood also showed a different side. Through the pressure between the blood, the pollutants were forced out of the body. Half an hour later, National Royal Knight Academy Library, Magic Spring. Demps once again took advantage of his good relationship with Deputy Director Hera and led everyone here to take a bath. At the same time, they could also replenish their magic energy. Of course, in order to facilitate the discussion within the team, Demps directly booked a small magic spring area. When Lee and Mia wore swimsuits woven with special fabric and took a bath in the magic spring with everyone, as when Lee's exaggerated muscular body sank into the magic spring, the overall level of her body seemed to rise by a level. Great! This way, everyone can participate in the Great Expedition together. When Lee was so excited that the muscles on her body bulged and contracted. As long as she could follow Nicholas during the expedition, she felt that she could overcome any obstacle. However, the specific allocation still had to be decided by the higher-up. A special talent like Wenli was very likely to be selected to join the blacksmith. In the spring, Mia naturally stuck her body to Han Dong's right arm the whole time, enjoying the blissful leisure time. Although she could faintly smell the scent of another woman on Han Dong's skin, Mia seemed to be used to it and didn't say anything. Phew! So comfortable. Abel was still the same as before. The moment his body was immersed in the magic spring, 2 beast ears immediately grew out from his hair. Even though he had obtained the physique of a member of the Dragon Clan, his essence was still the same. He took advantage of the gap between Abel and Han Dong. Demps just squeezed his body in and perfectly stuck in the middle. He could feel Han Dong's death power and also feel the layers of dragon pressure from Abel's body. Nicholas, your magic circuit has become very strange. It seems to be related to your left arm. I'll adjust it for you for free. Abel, I'll also adjust your meridians while I'm at it. The physique of a dragon is still a little different from that of a human. Just like that. The massage service, that cost thousands of copper coins to move a finger, was performed simultaneously on the 2 of them. This familiar feeling even made Han Dong feel that his youth had returned. While enjoying it, Han Dong remembered something. Oh right, Abel Demp, do you too know about the issue of Legion organization? This time, the Great Expedition doesn't seem to be carried out with the Knights as a unit. Instead, it will be a more compatible mixed Legion and special parts as the marching unit. On the other side, when Abel was about to answer, because the massage was too restrictive, accompanied by a tremor of the body, the white-haired beast's ears were also folded together. The following words were also overflowing with a sense of comfort. Grandfather mentioned this before. Like our Behemoth Knights, it seems that we will join forces with the Windwalker Knights and the Black Rose Knights to form a special force called the Wolves of Evernight for super-fast combat and reconnaissance. The number of troops is controlled at a scale of 100 people, not too large. The highest speed required must be 10 times faster than the expeditionary army. Without being affected by the Evernight, they can complete the reconnaissance and surprise attack of a certain stronghold in an instant. Grandfather took some things into consideration and didn't include me. The specific Legion organization and special force arrangement doesn't seem to have been completely determined yet. I heard from Grandfather that the finalization needs to be determined according to the research progress of the sponsor. Sponsor? Han Dong himself had a close cooperation with the Steam Knights and planned to go to the Steam headquarters in the near future. Yes, as the power core of this great expedition, the sponsor is a very important task. I heard from Grandfather that the sponsor had already started preparing for the great expedition 50 years ago. In addition to providing an endless source of power for the great expedition, he will also provide a variety of large mobile fortresses, military equipment, and interdimensional communication equipment, as well as the individual power armor specifically targeted against the hybrid demons. So far, 10 sets of speed-increasing armor for the Wolves of Evernight have been sent to Grandfather, and the effect is excellent. It seems that the entire expeditionary army will receive a set of power armor. As for the specific situation, it needs to be arranged by the higher-up. A bit interesting, Han Dong still remembered that when he was reborn into this world, he happened to be picked up by a small team as a head and brought back to the Holy City. When this small team faced the pursuing hybrid demons, they used firearms carried in the carriage and forced the hybrid demons to retreat through the shooting of copper bullet. The effect was very good, and it didn't consume personal stamina. Especially in large-scale battles, firearms coupled with copper, which was hated by the hybrid demons, may have a miraculous effect. After Abel gave the information he knew, Demps added a little. Ahem. Captain Abel is almost right. The specific Legion organization hasn't been decided yet. I still have some important information here. Mia should have heard of it in the Knights of Misfortune. At present, according to the in-depth discussion and voting of the entire council, there is a high probability that the commander of the great expedition will be the great demon captain. The reason is simple. Among all the knights in the Holy City, the only human who has completely entered the territory of the old king and lived alone outside the city for decades is the great demon captain. Moreover, in terms of loyalty, the great demon captain is also absolutely loyal to the humans and to the Holy City. Commander? By the way, how many captains will participate in this great expedition? I don't know the specifics, but it shouldn't be less than 4. When the final arrangement will be out, it will depend on the progress of the sponsor. Chapter 776. Great Demon, a very special commander in the 13 Knights Regiment. He founded the Demon Sect. For more details, please refer to the Commander chapter of the Knights Regiment. According to his personal history, he was indeed the best choice for the leader of the expedition. According to the experience of the great demon commander, he would be a great help for the expedition to go deep into the old king's territory. Of course, the great demon commander would not be the only one in charge of the expedition. The details of the various positions of power were being formulated in full swing. A week passed. Han Dong woke up on a spacious dark round wooden table. In front of him was a pool of saliva that came from Han Dong's exhaustion. On his left were 3 books full of note. On his right were various books related to dark magic. Some of them even required a certain status to borrow, and had the word seal written on them. While most of the knights who passed the assessment were lining up outside the church to receive the holy baptism or relaxing themselves through various means of entertainment, Han Dong was immersed in the library. Using the characteristic of dark knowledge, he was able to read all kinds of books in depth. However, on the opposite side of the round wooden table, Mia accompanied him the whole time. Even if it was boring reading, as long as she could accompany Nicholas, she was very satisfied. Perhaps because of Han Dong's influence, Mia started to read all kinds of books related to witchcraft and insects. She learned a lot. Just when Han Dong was about to borrow a new batch of books, a librarian with a mechanical structure suddenly came to the table. He handed over a bronze letter with a rather textured texture. On it was a wax seal with the words, "Big and Small Gears." A mechanical voice came from his throat full of thin tubes and gears. "Warren Nicholas, this is a letter from Mr. Newton. Please read it in 10 minutes. Thank you." Han Dong stared at the mechanical librarian and realized the recent changes in the Knight Academy. About 20% of the staff were replaced with mechanical librarians. Except for 50% of the brain tissue, the rest of the body was replaced with metal. Han Dong could not confirm whether the brain's consciousness was retained. Artificial intelligence was a controversial topic even in Han Dong's previous world. He believed that the Parliament would definitely exercise strict control over it, so there was no need for Han Dong to worry. Moreover, according to the cooperation between Han Dong and the Steam Knights, what the investor used was not a complete AI, but a limited modification based on human consciousness. The contents of the letter were as follows: Frowny face Mr. Nicholas, I have heard that you have successfully passed the selection process and joined the Expeditionary Army. I would like to express my congratulations. As a secret partner of the Steam Knights, you have provided quite effective assistance in life technology. We specially invite you to visit the headquarters of the Steam Knights, which is rarely open to the public. When the time comes, there will be a commissioner at the door to receive you. You just need to guarantee my name. By the way, I also asked the chief engineer of the Power Armor Department to build an exclusive power armor for you. After reading the letter, Han Dong smiled secretly. When did Mr. Newton become so tactful? If there's anything you need my help with, can't you just say it? Or can't you write down the things you need my help with on the letter? It just so happens that I have a headache from reading recently. It's better to relax at the Steam Night. In the past, all conversations involving experiments were conducted outside the laboratory. I heard that the headquarters of the Steam Knights is the largest among the 13 Knights. I haven't officially been there yet. Just as Han Dong was about to get up, due to the sensitivity of insects, Mia immediately woke up. Dear, where are you going? Well, the Steam Knights. Can you go in? That is the high-level confidential area of the Holy City. It is a secret area guarded by the 13 Knights. Han Dong waved the letter in his hand. Someone invited you. Do you want to come? Huh? Can I? Give it a try. If it doesn't work, you can return to the Knights of Misfortune. Hee, my husband is the best. Don't call me that. The reason why Han Dong called Mia first, it was because she had been following him for so many days. Second, if Mia was by his side, he could use her as an excuse if he encountered some troublesome and difficult situations that were difficult to refuse. They took the railway loop from the Knight Academy and arrived at the special street on the second floor, a Craftsman Street. The building was mainly designed with heavy metal. Large and small gear transmission systems, various types of boiler power engines, and exhaust pipes and metal chimneys neatly arranged between the walls of the building could be seen everywhere. There were also various miniature railway tracks between the relatively spacious streets to achieve the rapid transportation of the entire Craftsman Street. There were a large number of mechanical workshops here. As long as it was a young man with a certain degree of talent in machinery, he could try his luck here. At the same time, there were various shops on both sides of the street. A dazzling array of metal handicrafts could be bought as long as one had the money. The most valuable things were nothing more than two things. First, automatic firearms that integrated modern steam technology. Some residents who had never entered the Destiny space and did not dare to enter would pay a high price to buy them. After all, some bizarre things often happened inside the Holy City. Bullets with more than 30% copper content had a certain degree of lethality to the evil. Although there might not be a way to kill the evil, it could buy enough time. Moreover, the loud gunshots could also attract the attention of nearby patrols. Second, steam prosthetics or simple exoskeleton devices. In this context, it was not only people who lacked arms or legs who would be equipped with prosthetic. There were even some young men with 4 limbs who would choose to amputate their fragile human arms and replace them with powerful steam-powered prosthetics, thus gaining strength that surpassed humans in advance. They could even install some flamethrowers, gun structures, and so on in the prosthetic. This kind of modification could greatly increase the survival rate of ordinary people in their first Destiny. Of course, the cost was also quite high. Han Dong experienced the first Destiny, Bewitched. Little brother Edward in the movie was such a person who modified his prosthetic. With the power of the flamethrower and the prosthetics, he could even fight head-on with the impossible-to-resist evil spirits and barely survive. It was a pity that he was in the same batch as Han Dong, otherwise he might have been an official knight by now. It was also Mia's first time here. She grabbed Han Dong's arm and looked left and right, like a young couple shopping on the pedestrian street for the first time. "Let's go to that shop and take a look?" Mia stretched out her hand and pointed to a shop called Master Charlie's Watch Shop. When Han Dong looked over, he seemed to see an acquaintance. In the shop, a man with a dangerous hairline immediately attracted Han Dong's attention. "Huh? Knight Charlie, why is he here?" Chapter 777. Knight Charlie graduated from the Knight Academy, Mystery Branch. He was a genius who majored in suturing. In Han Dong's memory, he did not seem to have anything to do with the mechanic branch. Furthermore, a knight of this level did not need to come to the artisan district to buy mechanical equipment that was targeted at ordinary people. Even if he needed to adjust precision machinery, with Charlie's connections, he could easily connect with high-level mechanics directly. Strange, Charlie is standing on the inside of the counter. Combined with the name of the watch shop, could he be the owner here? Impossible, the secret word knights have a heavy workload. Other than the special leave before the expedition, it's impossible for them to have extra time to leave the secret museum. As Han Dong looked carefully, through the body of a customer, he saw a short old man about 70 years old sitting at the counter, adjusting an expensive watch with a rather sophisticated instrument. "Mia, follow me, okay." For a moment, Mia thought that Han Dong really wanted to buy something for her. However, as they approached the watch shop, Mia gradually recognized the high-level knight who was helping with the miscellaneous work in the shop. In the night conference, he had easily subdued the monsters raised by the Hell Knight. He was on a completely different level from her. Charlie LeBlanc Bermanchev. Why is he here? An invisible pressure engulfed Mia's entire body. Spiders, I could even see the shadows of some terrifying puppets floating behind this knight. As long as Charlie moved his index finger, the puppets would descend and kill the enemy in an instant. It was also because of this that Mia half hid behind Han Dong, looking timid. Han Dong, on the other hand, looked normal. After tidying up his collar and cuffs, he reached out and pushed open the glass door of the watch shop. Ring, ring, ring. The copper bell connected to the door rang. Then, a thin wire connected to the precision gear on the left side, driving a miniature steam press and starting to move the piston. With this system, the force of pushing the door was perfectly converted into energy and transmitted to a mechanical doll standing by the door, wearing a suit and in charge of welcoming customers. After smiling and bowing, the doll slowly raised its right arm and hung it horizontally in front of it, This action was to let the customers place their hats or coats in its hand. Then, it simply organized and stored them. Currently, a pot-bellied noble gentleman holding a golden hawk-headed cane was standing in front of the counter, carefully waiting for the old man to help him adjust his watch. There was not a trace of arrogance that came from a noble at all. He had a smile on his face the whole time and lowered his head without saying a word. When he heard the doorbell ring, he even turned around to signal the two people who had just entered to keep quiet. Following the completion of the precise debugging process, the noble man hurriedly bowed. "Thank you very much, Mr. Lindbergh, you're still as good as ever." After the man paid, he carefully held the watch in the airtight iron box, put on the top hat handed over by the welcoming robot, and quickly left. However, Han Dong saw a clue in this seemingly ordinary repair process. The watch that had been repaired by the old man was definitely not just the school team's time. There were also some miniature power sources and a rather sharp folding knife embedded in it. As for what it was used for, he wasn't sure. Han Dong hurriedly stepped forward to greet him politely and explained the purpose of his visit. "Senior Charlie, Mia and I happened to pass by here. We found that you were in the store, so we came over to say hello." This is? Charlie also had a good impression of Han Dong as a junior. After all, Han Dong took over more than a week's workload for him without saying a word, allowing him to have a special holiday before the expedition in advance. "Lindbergh, my adoptive father. My adoptive father named this store after me. My adoptive father is the oldest watchmaker in the Craftsman Street, and his skills are first class. If I'm free on weekdays, I come here to help." Charlie told him the origin of the store's name together. The old man pushed the bronze mirror on his face and stared at Han Dong and Mia. His face was full of disgust, as if he thought that the arrival of the two had disturbed the business of the watch store. "Charlie, since they are your friends, let's go out and talk. We don't need your help here for the time being." "Okay. I'll be back later." Charlie seemed to be bored in the store, and took the opportunity to go out and get some fresh air. He changed into a formal suit and wore a newsboy hat to cover his sparse head. Click. When he closed the door of the store, Charlie also took a deep breath and seemed to relax a lot. "Nicholas, what are you doing here? Your girlfriend doesn't look like someone who needs to use ordinary mechanical equipment. I remember that she seems to be ranked in the top 10 of this year's night conference." When she heard the word girlfriend, Mia's eyes lit up, and her fear of Charlie also weakened a lot. Han Dong didn't hide anything and took out the letter. Staring at the big and small gear wax seal, Knight Charlie naturally understood Han Dong's intention. An invitation letter authorized by the Steam Knights. "Have you been to the Steam City before?" "Steam City? Isn't it the Steam Knights?" "It seems that you haven't been there before. I happen to have time to come out and get some fresh air, so I'll go too. The Steam City is a very interesting place. If it weren't for my arrogance back then and owing Captain Hugo a big favor, I would have chosen the Steam Knights." "Knight Charlie, are you going in as the commander of the puppet guards?" "No, I'm going in as my adoptive father. My adoptive father used to be a senior engineer of the Steam Knights and participated in the design of the clock tower. After he retired, he opened a watch shop here under my name." Clock tower designer, Han Dong recalled the meeting just now. At first glance, the old man seemed to be just an ordinary person. But when he got closer, he could faintly feel a mysterious aura similar to the clockmaker, an aura that could bend time. By the way, who sent the invitation letter? Generally speaking, only elite knights can invite outsiders into the Steam City. "Mr. Newton. Congreve Newton." Suddenly, Charlie's eyes immediately became gloomy. He frowned and whispered, "How did you get in touch with this person? Be careful. This person's danger level is no less than the hybrid demons outside the city." My adoptive father's views were different from this person's, so he gave up his identity as a senior engineer in advance and left the Steam City. Yes, I did sense some danger. Thank you for the reminder, Senior. If it's not urgent when you enter the steam city, later, don't show me Newton's letter. I'll take you in directly. I don't want to be associated with the machinery faith, as soon as I enter the city. Okay. Chapter 778. Steam City, also known as the Heart of the Sacred City, it was an embedded city. As everyone knew, the Sacred City was a gigantic city in the form of a spire. The Sacred City, the surface, was divided into 4 levels by the Stairway of the Gods. The first level was the outer ring of the city wall, the civilian area. The second level was the inner ring, 200 meters above sea level, which included the National Royal Knight Academy, the commercial and trade area, the noble residential area, small and medium-sized associations, and so on. The third level was the core, 500 meters above sea level, which included the royal family, the Vatican, the headquarters of the various knight orders, large associations, and so on. The fourth level was the top, 1,000 meters above sea level, where the Supreme Council was located. The so-called Steam City was embedded in the inner layer of this spire city. Year 103 of the Evernight era. Kiddo Leslie, the first chief engineer of the construction of the Holy City and the head of the Knights of Steam, and a total of 219 construction engineers under his command, came up with an internal expansion project of the Holy City called Heart of Eternity. It was an attempt to use the power obtained from the realm of destiny and the steam technology currently mastered. In the inner mountain area of the second and third level of the Sacred City, an embedded supergiant steam power core would be built, which could solve the energy supply problem of the Sacred City. When the plan was submitted to the Council, high-ranking Councillor Valentine Z. Green, Examiner Washington Clefman, and Brewster Lightlegoff, the head of the Executive Yuan, agreed to the expansion project and proposed to deepen the renovation of the expansion project. They had a long-term vision. Since they wanted to expand the interior of the spire, instead of building a supergiant energy supply center, it was better to build an embedded city. While satisfying the energy supply of the Sacred City, they could also build a secret base specializing in steam technology development, allowing science and fate to develop together. Just like that, after 8 years of revision, the final plan was built. At the same time, all the members of the Steam Knights were required to live in it. At the same time, talents proficient in machinery were recruited from the Sacred City, including the civilian area, and invested in the construction of the Steam City. Even now, the special development path of mechanical apprentice was still maintained. As long as the apprentices passed the annual examination, they could not participate in the selection of fate and devote themselves to the research of steam technology. Of course, confident young people could also participate in the selection of fate and major in machinery at the Knight Academy. There were secret entrances on the second and third levels of the Holy City. Because the Steam City was related to the core technology of the Sacred City, as well as the top secret of the Great Expedition, the identity check of those who entered was very strict. It was required to prevent the introduction of pollution. Even an official knight would need an invitation to enter. Craftsman's District. In the deepest part of a certain machinery factory, inside a giant steam train manufacturing workshop, there was a stone wall close to the mountain. However, this place was filled with semi-mechanized or fully mechanized security personnel, as well as densely packed monitoring facilities. The word "Enter" was engraved on the wall. Please show me your valid ID and explain why you are going to the Steam City. Charlie handed over the 3 knights' medals and explained his purpose in a domineering voice. My friend, Frankie Candor, hopes that I can help him deal with the problem of highly intelligent humanoid machines. At the same time, my adoptive father, Lindbergh, wants me to pass a message to Deputy Director Lu Lifu of the Steam Association. These 2 are my helpers. They will be working with me the whole time. Verifying, please wait a moment. About a minute passed. The robot consular officer in front of them smiled and handed back the knight's medals. At the same time, he gave them a temporary collective pass to ensure that the three of them were together at all times. The guards in the Steam City would check the identities of outsiders at any time. If they couldn't show the pass, they would be immediately expelled. Next, a series of full-body tests would be carried out to ensure that the intruders didn't carry any pollutant. Rumble. Riding on a horizontal moving machine, they moved about 200 meters through the mountain full of metal frames and steam pipe. A pure bronze door embedded with gears appeared in front of them. The gears of various sizes faintly outlined the image of a fat investor on the door. Identity verification passed. The huge bronze door opened by itself. A steam city that transcended eras appeared in front of Han Dong. This embedded city represented the highest point of the human race's technology tree in the current world. Without the use of electricity, the city achieved artificial intelligence and efficient energy utilization through steam technology. After all the apprentice knights and knights passed the destiny space, the pure bronze they brought out would be transported here after handing it in. The heavy metal smell was immediately inhaled into Han Dong's nose. However, Han Dong's attention was completely attracted by this beautiful steam city. To some extent, it completely overturned his view of the sacred city's technology. At first, Han Dong thought that when the end of the world came, humans relied on the destiny space to survive and technology would stagnate. However, it turned out that no matter what kind of world it was, researchers would always exist and would be an important pillar to promote human development. Oh my God! Is this the driving heart of the sacred city? Han Dong stood on the outermost metal aisle and looked down at this unparalleled metal city. He was stunned for a full 5 minutes. Between the spacious buildings, in addition to using railways and steam locomotives as transportation vehicles, there was also a super-efficient aerial vehicle, the Rusty Whale. It was an all-metal-powered airship that imitated the shape of a whale. According to its size and purpose, there were differences between carrying people and cargo. The most eye-catching was the main district of the steam city, which was only occupied by a super-large building. The heart of eternity. The holy city's power source. The column of steam, the super-large cylindrical tower building, had thousands of pipeline branches at the bottom, which were closely connected to the various buildings in the steam city. Like the roots of a tree, they drew a steady stream of energy from other buildings. The top of the tower reached the highest point of the inner cave. If it continued to go up, it would cross the surface and reach the council area. Rumor had it that at the top of the pillar of steam, there was the Sugar Daddy's treasure vault. There were mountains of gold and silver inside, and all the valuable treasures were stored inside. It was a big bed for the patron to sleep on. This is the Steam City. The sacred city's engineers spent nearly 100 years building and perfecting this masterpiece. The machinery manufacturing and research that is being carried out here will become an indispensable part of the Great Expedition. Chapter 779. When Han Dong looked up at the pillar of steam, which had an energy supply comparable to a large nuclear power plant, he saw a large auxiliary building in the air. It was located in the middle of the pillar, about 400 meters above the ground. With the pillar of steam as the center, there was a 10.2-meter diameter connecting pipe that could allow vehicles and living creatures to pass through. There were a total of 12 connecting pipes, arranged in a spiral in the middle, connecting and carrying a ring fortress around the pillar of steam as an auxiliary building. The surface of the ring fortress was engraved with a rather conspicuous gear cross pattern in dark brass. There were also many whale pads around the ring fortress for various sizes of rusty whales to land. Everything here is managed by the Sugar Lord? Although this place is also under the control of the Parliament, the real ruler is indeed the Sugar Lord. There is no doubt about that. The Sugar Lord's power can be said to be the greatest among the 13 Knights. The economic system of the Holy City is inseparable from the Sugar Lord for some reason, and the operation of the entire steam city cannot be separated from the Sugar Lord. If this is the heart of the holy city, then the Sugar Lord is also the heart of the steam city. This steam city was designed and built by the ancestors, and the appearance of the Sugar Lord officially led this city into its heyday. However, although the ruler was the Sugar Lord, the person who really managed and monitored the steam city in secret was another person, the Sugar Lord's most trusted aide, the deputy commander of the Steam Knights, the founder of the Machinery Faith, Congreve Newton. The Machinery Faith was a special organization that was submitted and approved by the Parliament by the investors and the many associations under Steam City. The faith had its own doctrine. However, the development of the Machinery Faith and all kinds of missionary activities are absolutely limited to the Steam City. What about the gathering place of the church? Han Dong looked around. Although he saw many mechanical churches on the streets full of pipes, they were all small and medium-sized. He did not see the kind of large church that could carry the entire Machinery Faith. Didn't you see it from the beginning? Charlie pointed above his head, which was the circular fortress that was connected to the pillar of steam. The Holy Ring, the core sanctum of the Machinery Faith. At the same time, it is also the air fortress and monitoring center of the Steam Knight. Newton, who has supreme control, can monitor everything in Steam City through the Holy Ring. Spatial fortress? Mr. Newton is really generous. Looks like the place he invited me to should be the Holy Ring. Knight Charlie didn't ask much about what Han Dong was going to do as it involved his privacy. Remember to be careful when dealing with these mechanical bastards. If you are not in a hurry, you can follow me to my friend's factory. I can show you the real Steam City in advance, not the fake city under the influence of the church. Alright, sorry to trouble you, Senior Charlie. They walked down the stairs and arrived at the street of the Steam City. Immediately, a head-sized reconnaissance aircraft arrived in front of the three of them and left after Charlie showed his temporary pass. The streets were paved with metal, and the residents of Steam City were not ordinary people. They could work in the workshops, factories, or research institutes in Steam City. They were at least senior engineers, senior researchers, or professional technicians who had worked in machinery workshops recognized by the Holy City for more than 5 years. As for the ordinary residents living in Steam City, they were also very special. Some of the residents here were just ordinary people, and some were retired knights. They all had a common characteristic, a half-body modification. All humans who were not mechanics or engineers and wanted to obtain long-term residency in Steam City had to sign an agreement called body donation when entering the city. They had to donate 50% of their body to Steam City for body modification. In addition to the conventional metal prosthetic grafting, a miniature gear sensor also needed to be connected to the brain. The large sensor terminal equipped with the Holy Ring could check the individual's brain consciousness through sensors from time to time. Once it found that the individual's mind was corrupted, it would immediately give them steam purification. This involved a problem. Monitoring one's mind meant that the individual's privacy would no longer exist. Who would be willing to sign such an agreement? The answer was simple. Some ordinary people who could no longer live in the civilian area, or some retired knights who had suffered serious physical injuries, would welcome their second life in Steam City. Even some mechanics would graft mechanical appendages on their bodies, which could greatly improve their work efficiency. Walking on the streets of such a city, Han Dong and his team were the oddballs here. Charlie led the two around a few streets. They stopped in front of a large factory. This large factory had a full set of manufacturing and production processes for mechanical dolls. The workers who were doing the testing and key assembly work on the assembly line or debugging the parameters in front of the difference engine were all semi-mechanized humans. Their brains were absolutely intact. None of the robots were involved in the production process. Everyone was talking and laughing at work, and the overall atmosphere was very good. The group entered the factory. The workers immediately bowed their heads to salute Charlie. At the same time, a very enthusiastic voice came from the second floor. "Charlie, why are you here? It's boring to follow the old man. A friend happened to be coming to Steam City, so I came to see you. Frankie, how have you been recently?" "How can I be? I'm just taking the allowance. How's Mr. Lindbergh? The expedition is coming, and I've been very busy here. I haven't visited him in a long time. This old man's body is very strong. He's very energetic when he scolds me. That's Mr. Lindbergh's personality. Come up and talk." This man named Frankie was an uncle of the same age as Charlie. He was also the director of this factory. The difference was that Frankie maintained a 100% human body and had not undergone any modifications. He had obtained an advanced mechanical engineer certificate and obtained permanent residency in Steam City. "This is Nicholas and his girlfriend, Mia. Nicholas and I are in the Secret Word Knights and have helped me a lot in private. Frankie Candor is my childhood playmate. He used to be an apprentice under my adoptive father for a long time." With Charlie's introduction, the two sides naturally became familiar with each other. Just as the two uncles sat down and were about to talk about some recent events, Charlie's brain suddenly jolted. A nerve in Charlie's head was pulled, and he stood up with a solemn expression. "Why is the guy from the machinery faith here?" "Hey, Charlie, don't get too excited. Because of some things in the expedition, the machinery faith has been very active recently. They are conducting all kinds of missionary activities in the residential area. I'll deal with it. Wait a moment." Chapter 780. Praise the machinery. Praise the steam. Knowledge is power, and Mr. Newton is the pioneer of the world with infinite wisdom. Please listen carefully, the era of machinery is coming. The mechanized preacher's voice echoed throughout the street. A crimson robe with copper-plated edges. A data prosthetic eye and a semi-enclosed breathing apparatus. The skull structure was retained, and the rest of the body was replaced by a steam-powered war body. In the middle of the belt, there was a disc-shaped book gear badge. At the same time, there was a thick book with a brass cover hanging on both sides of the belt. It was the Canon of Mechanics, written by Newton himself. 4 tentacle-like, mechanical appendages were installed on the back, which could not only increase work efficiency but also allow them to kill enemies faster in battle. These were the clergy from the machinery faith. They were more modified than the residents, and they even modified the frontal lobe of the brain to serve the church more purely. They preached the nobility of the machinery faith, the importance of knowledge, and more people to join the faith. At the same time, they would also deal with the residents of Steam City who had impure thoughts in advance. The ones who came to Frankie's factory were not friendly clergy. It was a fully armed clergy squadron of 40 people. They were not here to preach, but because the monitoring database of the Holy Ring had issued a red warning, indicating that more than 5 people in the factory were potentially dangerous. The average thinking risk factor of the factory had reached the warning line. Indeed, Frankie himself had a certain rejection of human body modification. He believed that machinery could serve and be used by humans. It could even facilitate life and resist the dangers outside the city, but he did not agree with mixing machinery and human bodies. This was especially true for organizations like the machinery faith that attempted to modify the brain. Therefore, the technicians recruited by Frankie's factory were almost the same in terms of ideology. They belonged to the conservative faction in Steam City. They could barely accept the physical modification, but they absolutely did not allow the brain to be modified. It was the same. As the influence of the church expanded, the machinery faith repeatedly came here and used the excuse of impure thinking as an excuse to take the technicians here to the Holy Ring for forced modification. However, Frankie also had a backup plan. There was also a group of powerful conservatives in Steam City, and one of them was a captain of the Steam Knight. At the same time, The investor had also said that the machinery faith had to follow the wishes of the residents when recruiting priests. Frankie was secretly in contact with the conservative knight. Once the machinery faith came, he would immediately contact the conservative knights. If the knights came to save the day, these priests would not dare to catch people in the open. But it was different this time. Due to the high risk factor detected by the Holy Ring, after receiving permission, a squadron came to look for him. The leader was a steam knight with a decree in his hand. He wore heavy steam armor and held a giant power axe. This knight was 3 times larger than the average priest. The pressure he constantly released was so great that the workers here could not breathe. I hereby announce the arrest order issued by the Holy Ring. Frankie and all the workers in his factory will be brought to the Holy Ring for a thinking review. As for the restless people who had blasphemous thoughts on the level of thinking, they would be dealt with severely according to the laws of the Holy City. Take him away. With the law here, there was no room for negotiation. The 40 mechanical priests, who had undergone deep modifications and possessed combat strength that was infinitely close to that of knights, immediately restrained all the workers. Just when one of the priests came to find Frankie, on the factory assembly line, a half-finished robot suddenly moved. In the blink of an eye, he moved 10 meters away and appeared right in front of the clergyman. One punch, crack, the sound of machinery collapsing, all kinds of mechanical parts splashed everywhere. The torso and limbs all collapsed. Only a head was left rolling on the ground. It stared at the suddenly resurrected robot with a face full of horror. Not only were the clergy bewildered by this bizarre situation, but even the workers here didn't know what was going on. The robots they processed and created were only shells. They needed to be sent to the pillar of steam through the underground transportation pipeline. The advanced life technician installed a brain inside to be able to perform various activities. Moreover, these robots did not belong to the combat category, let alone being able to shatter a powerful priest with one punch. Only Frankie knew what was going on. The only one who could do this was his friend, puppet user. Charlie, what is this? Could it be that you guys secretly implanted an intelligent system into the mechanical marionettes? What kind of blasphemy is this? The priest was injured, which directly attracted the attention of the steam knight. The huge steam armor moved and came in front of the resurrected robot. The hydraulic device was activated. Sizzle! The steam hissed, accompanied by a ton of power axe. Dang! The air pressure spread and even the whole factory was trembling. What happened next left everyone dumbfounded. The unfinished robot on the production line caught the drive chop, released by a steam knight with its weak arms. The iron plate under its feet caved in a large circular pit. Logically speaking, this weight had long exceeded the theoretical limit of the robot. The reason why it could withstand it was that some threads that were not visible to the naked eye were inserted into the body of the robot, which increased the torso by several times. Being able to secretly control a semi-finished puppet to be able to fight back and forth with a steam knight, this was the strength of puppet envoy Charlie. In the lounge on the second floor of the factory, Knight Charlie exuded a slight hostility. This hostility should have been erased by Captain Hugo in 10 years. If it was in the past, Charlie might have killed all these guys because of his irritable mood. At this moment, Han Dong held the timid Mia with one hand and put the other hand on Charlie's shoulder. Senior Charlie, you almost have a comprehensive understanding of the Steam City along the way. Next, you and Frankie can catch up here. Let me handle the things in the factory to avoid complicating things. Anyway, I have to go to the Holy Ring to see Mr. Newton. Let this group of priests take me there and save me some time. During the great expedition, I hope you can take care of me. Charlie was silent for a while and nodded silently. He also withdrew his hostility. Okay. Han Dong stared at Knight Charlie, who immediately returned to normal. He remembered the terrifying existence called Puppet Demon in the night conference 10 years ago, who almost killed the participants in front of the whole holy city. Needless to say, Captain Hugo was really something. Han Dong stepped out of the lounge and stood by the handrail of the corridor on the second floor. He cleared his throat and then expanded his voice. "Hey! Don't you guys know that I, Dr. Nicholas, am doing mechanical experiments here?" "Dr. Nicholas? Who is that?" Chapter 781. There were only a handful of people in the Steam City who could be given the title of Doctor. The title of Doctor here was different from the one in the Holy City. It had to be personally authorized by the investor or Newton. It had to be someone who had made outstanding contributions to the development of steam technology. Most of them were older and could not be this young man who looked like he was in his early 20s. Also, the name Nicholas was completely unfamiliar. He had never heard of it before. At this moment, sizzle, steam continued to overflow from the giant armor. Some of the joints of the armor were already red from the heat. Full load, power crush. The angry steam knight was forced to use all his strength to crush the mechanical doll in front of him. Then he looked at the young man on the second floor with anger. "Dr. Nicholas? Warren Nicholas, are you the champion of the last night conference?" This heavy steam knight was called Jonathan. He had watched the entire process of the conference as a member of the night. After all, the last night conference was of great significance to the Steam Knight. After more than 10 years of hard work, the machinery faith had finally achieved the coexistence of combat AI and self-consciousness. Using an ordinary student as a carrier, they introduced the highest level of biology and steam mechanical science to transform a perfect combat priest. The seed of destiny had also undergone a qualitative change due to the introduction of machinery. Such a masterpiece was also recognized by the investor. With the title of Investor's Creation, he stepped onto the stage of the night conference. According to the standards of the previous night's conference, the probability of this creation winning the first place was 73% after the calculation by the steam difference engine. The Steam Knights intended to use this perfect creation to win first place and submit the creation, training, and expedition use plan of mechanical knights to the Parliament. Who would have thought that two unexpected events would occur during the competition? 1. The creation could not adapt to the sparring type of battle and could not control the strength of his attack. During the competition, he showed excessive killing intent and almost caused the deaths of other contestants. It could be seen that the manipulation of the creation still needed to be further adjusted. 2. In the finals, the creation was defeated by Warren Nicholas, when all parameters were normal and there was no energy loss. Moreover, according to the subsequent performance of Nicholas, he had not shown his true strength in the battle with the creation. These 2 points directly disrupted the plan of the Steam Knight. However, the investor was not angry. Instead, he appreciated Han Dong, a young man. He personally extended an olive branch to Nicholas, and at the same time, he offered conditions that were hard to refuse. In the end, Nicholas chose to join the Secret Word Knights under Hugo. This series of events shocked almost all the knights in the Steam Knight. The scene cut back. Jonathan stared at Nicholas, who was leaning against the railing on the second floor, and immediately motioned for his subordinates to stop. "Doctor? I don't have any information about your identity in the Steam City in my database, and I remember that you joined the Secret Word Knights. Nicholas, you better have a good enough reason to explain the situation here." "Reason? See for yourself." Han Dong threw the envelope with the steam seal over. Staring at Mr. Newton's signature on the letter and the tone of communication between equals, Knight Jonathan immediately realized the seriousness of the problem. In his opinion, Han Dong might have rejected his financial backer at the conference, but he was secretly cooperating with him. The letter is indeed real. However, what is the combat AI implanted in the ordinary mechanical doll? I hope Knight Nicholas can give me a satisfactory answer. Whether it is the code of the Steam City or the supreme constitution of the Holy City, the control of AI is extremely strict. Do I need to report to you when it involves the top secret of the bishop level? Han Dong directly asked Jonathan, who was stunned. However, Jonathan was also suppressing a ball of anger in his heart. Not only was he forced to use all his strength by a useless robot, but he was also verbally bullied by a junior who had just become a knight. He had no way to back down. However, if he provoked Mr. Newton's anger because of his impulsiveness, the loss would outweigh the gain. Indeed, you don't need to report to me. Han Dong put on a proud face. I originally said that in this mechanical doll factory, I would complete the basic parameters of biological functions in advance. Now, the data has been disrupted by you before it can be measured. Forget it, take me directly to the Holy Ring. Han Dong's words startled Jonathan, and the anger in his heart subsided by more than half. We were just following the instructions from above. We didn't know you were conducting experiments here. Forget it, it's not easy for you. I won't mention this to Mr. Newton. Right. This factory has a close cooperation with me in private. Some simple parameter calculations involving mechanical life will be done here. You should know what I mean, right? Don't involve this factory in the future. Yes. I will report to the higher-ups. Well, let's go. After a round of communication, Han Dong had the absolute advantage. Then he walked down the stairs, reached out and patted Jonathan's heavy armor, and left the factory under the doubtful and grateful eyes of the workers. The factory manager, Frankie, was also puzzled. He looked at Knight Charlie, who came out of the break room. Charlie, what's going on? Charlie waved his hand, and the things in the factory that were messed up or destroyed by the battle were all connected back to their original positions by invisible threads. He said helplessly, "It's nothing. It's nothing. This kid and Newton really do have a secret cooperation. So I owe this kid 2 favors." As a guide, Knight Jonathan accompanied Han Dong the whole time. From the high-speed elevator inside the Pillar of Steam, they came to the Holy Ring level that was 400 meters high. Here, the sign of a cross made of gears could be seen everywhere. The people walking here all wore a uniform with copper edges, and there was only a difference in color. This kind of uniform could provide all kinds of defense. It could also be used to cover the deeply modified body to prevent the biomechanics on his body from frightening ordinary knight allies. Through the connecting channel, they arrived at the headquarters of the Machinery Faith, a holy ring. At the entrance of the Holy Ring, Han Dong showed the special letter. A special aura instantly descended. The guard of the Holy Ring with a power axe and Knight Jonathan, who accompanied Han Dong, immediately knelt down. A drop of cold sweat flowed down Jonathan's cheek. "Nicholas, you're finally here. How is it? Isn't the Steam City spectacular? With your knowledge, you should be able to understand the beauty here, right?" Congreve Newton came to greet him personally. In Newton's view, knowledge is power. Nicholas, on the other hand, was an erudite scholar who possessed great power. Therefore, regardless of whether he was a newly promoted knight or not, Newton would treat him as an equal. It was completely different from the aristocratic image in the outside world. Steam City. Inside the Holy Ring, Mr. Newton showed a little of his original form. His whole body was wrapped in a kind of liquid gold that seemed to come from the destiny dimension. Even the right half of his face was the same. Only the left half of his face remained human. Maybe it was a wrapped state, or maybe the liquid gold was a part of his body. He gave up walking. Maybe it was the anti-gravity effect of the liquid gold, or maybe it was the magnetic levitation effect between the magnetic field inside the Holy Ring and the liquid gold, or maybe it was Newton's flying ability. He came to the entrance through a kind of floating method. Such a posture was like a god. Chapter 782. Nicholas, the letter has explained. Because of the bionics biomass data you provided during the cooperation, as well as the brain parameters of some life forms outside the city, our work progress has improved qualitatively. I specifically asked the senior engineers in the church to develop an exclusive power armor for the Great Expedition for you. However, this power armor is still undergoing the final stability test. The test will take a few hours. Since you came in advance, I would like to invite you to visit our various laboratories here. No problem. By the way, the research progress on life forms in your laboratory seems to be quite good recently. It's all thanks to the steam dynamics experimental data provided by Mr. Newton and the related confidential papers. The effect is indeed good, but it's still far from great progress. It's just some superficial fusion, and there is no uncontrollable rejection phenomenon for the time being. Haha. What I gave you is just experimental data at the human level. The transformation technology that you mastered in just a few months can also be effectively applied to other types of life forms. I really hope you chose us, the Knights of Steam. Let's go, follow me to the church's laboratory. I hope you can give some effective suggestions. No problem. Han Dong's expression remained the same as usual as he spoke to Newton in his current state. It should be known that Mr. Newton was an existence comparable to a god within the machinery faith. Even some of the high-ranking priests and church hosts had to be respectful when talking to Newton. This also made Knight Jonathan, who was in charge of leading the way, break out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he suppressed his anger, otherwise everything would be over. He officially entered the Holy Ring. This was considered the second largest building in the Steam City, after the Pillar of Steam. There was a capsule-type, single-unit mobile vehicle between the walls of the Holy Ring building, allowing the church personnel to quickly reach any area. However, Han Dong did not need to ride this vehicle. As Mr. Newton raised his hand, a drop of liquid gold was peeled off from the surface of his body. Through expansion and plasticity, it turned into a metal seat that perfectly fit Han Dong's body. The atomic distance can be stretched and contracted? I didn't expect you to dabble in physics, Nicholas. If you can join the machinery faith, I will promote you to the High Priest and the Vice President of the Biology Society. Haha. Han Dong could only reply with laughter. After all, he wasn't a member of the Steam Knights. According to the rules, if he were to join a different knight order, he wouldn't be able to hold an important position. No matter how much Newton thought highly of Han Dong, it was useless. Newton, if you have something to say, just say it. I'm happy to help. After all, your time is precious. That's right. I invited you here because I need you to provide knowledge assistance. However, this matter involves the fundamental interests of the machinery faith, the Steam Knights, and even Mr. Sponsor. At the same time, it's classified as a top secret. So before I tell you anything, I need to sign a confidentiality agreement in advance. When the agreement was handed to Han Dong, he immediately frowned. So that's what you're talking about. I've heard some rumors before. Make the best use of everything. Although from a humanitarian point of view, it was a little cruel. However, this would also help these poor knights realize their lifelong pursuit of chivalry. At the same time, it could also take them to further places to see. Instead of dying in an unknown place, it would be better for them to die on the battlefield as knights and let their good names be passed down forever in the Holy City. Han Dong didn't make any comments and signed his name at the lower right corner. Very good. The main problem at present is brain control. The supervision of the Parliament in this area is also quite strict. The control of the Death Soldiers can occasionally meet the standards, but there is no guarantee that they can pass the Holy City's audit 100%. By then, the Great Expedition will also lose a lot of combat power. Such a Death Soldier troop is extremely important to the Great Expedition. In the early stages of a large-scale war, it can reduce the death rate of our soldiers to a minimum, and at the same time, it can effectively collect intelligence on the enemy. Well, I'll try my best. With Mr. Newton leading the way, the inspections along the way were skipped one by one. They came directly to the Holy Temple area, where the secret experiment was being carried out. A large number of fallen knights, who were originally imprisoned in Tal prison, were secretly escorted here to carry out an experimental research called the Resurrected Brain Death Soldier Transformation Plan. It was a kind of resurrected brain technology of unknown origin. The principle was to completely kill the brains of the fallen knight. The contaminants would also become easier to remove with the death of the brain. 5 minutes after the brain died, the contaminants could be completely removed through the method of steam brainwashing. The next step was to overload the brain. By embedding a set of micron-scale gears with a fixed structure in the cerebellum, a resurrected brain array was constructed. Through the external activation of the priests in the church, the brain could be completely reborn. Resurrected brain would allow a fallen knight to completely get rid of the influence of contamination. As for their completely distorted bodies, they would be completely removed through surgery and replaced with a mechanical body that matched their talent ability. However, there was an unsolvable problem with this technology. Once a life form fell into a state of brain death, the brain would undergo irreversible changes. A large number of brain cells would begin to decompose due to the lack of oxygen supply, and the various functional areas would also be in a permanent state of chaos. Resurrected brain could restore the basic functions of the brain, but the consciousness would still be chaotic. Primitive desires would no longer be restricted and would gush out from the depths of the brain. These resurrected brain death soldiers would show aggression towards any form of life form. To a certain extent, it was very similar to zombies. Currently, the machinery faith was trying to gain control of the resurrected brain through various methods. For example, implanting an intelligent AI system or implanting a control interface in their heads for artificial control. However, these methods had limitations, and there would still be situations where loss of control would occur. Sizzle! The large gears rotated and layers of copper doors descended. More than 100 mechanical engineers, priests were working day and night on research. More than 100 proposals had been proposed and rejected. However, Han Dong's eyes were not on these researchers and the mountains of paper. Instead, he was staring at the center of the Holy Temple area, a large circular storage area covered by glass. The Special Forces, resurrected brain death soldiers, were all gathered inside. Their torsos had been replaced with steam-powered self-adapting mechanical bodies, but their heads remained. However, this scene was different from what Han Dong had imagined. The knights who got rid of the contamination through the resurrected brain did not succeed in transforming into a humanoid resurrected person. Instead, they became a type of monster, an overly manic monster. Because of their manic behavior, they completely bit their upper and lower lip. The structure of their oral cavity was completely exposed. Their faces were ferocious, and they slammed their heads against the thick glass of the storage area in an attempt to reduce the confusion in their brains. Other than the sound of slamming, there was also a high-frequency sound of teeth grinding. Crunch, crunch. All the resurrected brain death soldiers were rapidly and orderly grinding their teeth at all times, deliberately sharpening their teeth to make it easier to bite the target. Chapter 783. Nicholas, don't be fooled by their manic appearance. Once we inject a certain amount of nerve lubricant into their brains, it will stabilize their violent mood. Of course, we hope that there is a better way to stabilize their mental state. Do you want to take a look at our current research paper? There's no need for the paper. I only have one question. Does this brain technology come from the Destiny space? The reason why Han Dong asked this was because the more he looked at the mechanical soldiers, the more they looked like the zombies in the movies. But they were definitely not normal zombies. They had gotten rid of the pollution and retained the characteristics of their talent tree. They had also replaced their flesh with mechanical bodies, so it was not bad overall. Brain death soldiers. This kind of special unit could be used during the expedition, especially when the hybrid demons were fighting a large-scale war. There was no fear and no pollution. This unit of over 1,000 people could display 100% of their strength in the early stages of the war. They could kill their way into the enemy's ranks and use the various information-gathering devices installed in their mechanical bodies to obtain first-hand information on the hybrid demons and send it back to the expeditionary army. As long as the stability problem could be solved, everything could be discussed. That's right, I once came into contact with a chain event called the Snow of Death. After winning the war with the Japanese and achieving a perfect ending, I chose to use up all my points to bring out the artificial brain technology from the Japanese in the Destiny world. Han Dong nodded and replied, "Since it is a technology from the Destiny space, it is hard to control it with just my biological knowledge. But I have a subordinate that came from the Destiny space who specializes in a revive the dead. I have a tube of revive injection that was made by this expert and tested in the Manor's laboratory. You can inject a small amount into the brain of the deceased and try it. If the effect is good, I will do my best to provide a similar liquid to the Steam Knights due to our cooperation." Saying this, a test tube filled with a green liquid was taken out from Han Dong's hand. It was filled with Drive West's exclusive liquid, so it could not be replicated. Only Drive West could use his exclusive formula and his own medicine creation ability to produce this liquid. Oh, technical isolation? Technology isolation, ooh. Some technologies that originate from the Destiny space are isolated from the real world. Even if they are produced using the same method, they will not be able to produce the corresponding product. The reason for the isolation was that different Destiny worlds were in different dimensions, the entropy of the universe or some fundamental laws were different. Yes, only my professor can make this kind of liquid. Newton stared at the green liquid in the test tube. Even with his eyes, he couldn't decipher it. "Okay, I'll arrange for clinical testing as soon as possible. If the effect is up to standard, I hope to get a large number of similar drugs in the short term. Of course, our Steam Knights will also give you something of value in return." After saying that, Newton immediately handed the tube of medicine to the researcher next to him and started the experiment. He looked at the pocket watch in his hand and continued, "There's no need to waste time here. Nicholas, your exclusive armor has completed the final inspection. Come with me. I have instructed the engineer to send it to my office." All right. In addition to his identity as the deputy commander, Mr. Newton also held the two major identities of manufacturing director and archbishop. His office was named the Sanctuary. It was a 3-story tower-shaped office. The first floor was the library. The most cutting-edge and valuable scientific books were stored here for Mr. Newton to accumulate knowledge in his spare time. The second floor was the monitoring room. It was equipped with the most advanced conscious difference engine of the Steam City as the central mainframe. It was connected to all the monitoring equipment in the Holy Ring and could spread to any corner of the Steam City. Sitting here, he could monitor everything in the Steam City. If the Holy City did not restrict the development of the automaton faith, Newton could even expand his vision to the entire Holy City. The third floor was the armor room. To a certain extent, Newton was also an armor fan. He had always been pursuing internal and external development. In addition to the enhancement of his body through the Destiny realm, he also used steam technology to strengthen the exterior. Therefore, he collected several sets of power armor that represented the highest craftsmanship in the Steam City on the third floor. Not long after he arrived at the office, Newton received a message from the suicide researcher and showed an exaggerated smile. The initial clinical effect of the drug you gave is really good, but it still needs to be observed for a while. Once the stability can be controlled, I will owe you a favor. The weight of such a sentence was not ordinary. At the same time, Newton gently clapped his hands. A cylindrical glassware was slowly pushed into the office by two strong priests. The inside was filled with an organic solution to ensure the activity of the special armor. The armor displayed in front of Han Dong was beyond his imagination. It was difficult to even associate its appearance with armor. Soaked in the solution was not an exoskeleton armor, nor was it the nanoarmor similar to the one in crisis on the island. Instead, it was a cloak-like holy vestment. Nicholas, you showed a rare mutant close combat mage stance in the night conference. The variability and proliferation of your body means that you don't need external mechanical appendages. As for some conventional power armor, it is difficult to match your hybrid demonic characteristics in terms of self-adaptation. Therefore, I specially designed this holy vestment style power armor for you. Its manufacturing process used the top mechanical weaving technique in the Steam City. The chaotic metal holy magic steel, which was taken from outside the city and had anti-magic properties, was processed into metal threads using a special softening and wire drawing technique. Then, the threads were woven. At the same time, this vestment is also embedded with a miniature steam power source, auxiliary seal patterns, and anti-gravity circuit. Its quality has reached the unique level. As for the specific effect, you will know when you go back and try it yourself. With your knowledge system, it will be easy for you to control this holy vestment. Thank you, Mr. Newton. I will speed up the production of the improved resurrection potion and try to meet the needs here. Okay. The main material was brass-edged and dark gray chaotic metal threads. At the same time, because it was made from the automaton faith, the back of the vestment was plated with a gear cross mark through pure copper. Once Han Dong put it on, it meant that he had a connection with the automaton faith. But this vestment was really fragrant. Chapter 784. Even though Han Dong was well aware of Newton's intention, to tie Han Dong's profile to the church through the robe with the mark of the machinery faith and deepen the connection between Han Dong, an outsider, and the Knights of Steam. But Han Dong still gladly accepted this unique quality equipment that incorporated the core technology of the Knights of Steam. And he wore the holy magic robe in front of everyone. The robe woven with chaotic metal threads gently attached to Han Dong's body. The embedded energy source was activated. Han Dong did not need to enter the crowman form to achieve floating and basic flight. At the same time, the seal embedded inside the robe could effectively assist the magic circuit in Han Dong's body to achieve spell resonance. Spell resonance. When the main body releases magic, the circuits inside the robe will work together through grafting, reducing magic consumption and casting spells faster. Moreover, defensive spells can be directly effective on the surface of the robe, significantly increasing the defensive effect. Wearing the robe and floating in the air, Han Dong really looked like a priest in a church. His first trip to the Steam City was almost over. Before leaving, Han Dong asked curiously, "Mr. Newton, what do you think? I heard that the final preparations for the eve of the expedition are closely related to the preparation of the Knights of Steam. How long will it take? I can prepare in advance. 2 months at most. By the way." Newton looked at the pocket watch in his hand. "The time is just right. A project in the Holy Ring happens to be completed today. You can go and see for yourself, and you will naturally understand the progress at this stage." Newton was also in a good mood today. He immediately took Han Dong to another secret area of the Holy Ring. Along the way, in addition to the engineers of the machinery faith, Han Dong also saw another group of knights. Most of them were women, wearing white robes with golden edges and a prayer seal printed on their armbands. The nuns of the Holy Knights? As Han Dong passed through the secret passage embedded in the inner wall of the Holy Ring, he came to a church in the sky that had just been built. A cardinal was conducting a final inspection of the church. "You're in luck. Today is the day of the completion and trial of the mobile sanctum." Mobile sanctum? Han Dong had heard of this term before. It seemed to be a church that could be propelled by power and follow the army on expeditions. This project was incomparably important to the Great Expedition because the expeditionary army would have to be exposed to the Evernight environment for a long period of time. Even some elite knights couldn't guarantee that they would be able to withstand several years of pollution and corrosion. Therefore, the necessary holy baptism and stress release were necessary during the expedition. This was to ensure that the expeditionary army would be in a normal state without any mental pressure when they arrived at the old king's territory and the largest war broke out. Just as Han Dong was looking at the steam system embedded in the walls of the church, rumble, the high-efficiency steam engine began to operate. A large amount of steam was discharged from the pipes embedded in the outer wall of the church. Hundreds of small thrusters installed at the bottom began to work simultaneously. He left the Holy Ring. The test flight of the sanctum that could accommodate 700 people at once was a success. Standing on the mobile sanctum and looking down at the grand work of the people in the steam city, Han Dong could vaguely see the embryonic form of the Great Expedition. A month later, the peak of the Holy City, Mount Olympus Supreme Council Hall. All the commanders of the 13 knight regiments were present at the meeting. An extremely important meeting would be held today, regarding the Great Expedition, the appointment of commanders and generals. According to the information obtained from deciphering the slate of the Old King, the strategic goals of this great expedition were comprehensively considered. The council decided to let 5 commanders be the core leaders of the great expedition and try their best to achieve the strategic goals. The other commanders would stay inside the Holy City to ensure that the Holy City would not be attacked and occupied by the other old kings during the expedition, and that all night affairs would operate normally. Among them, the highest position in this great expedition was commander. The result had been reached in the preliminary discussion 2 months ago. It was decided that the great demon of the Misfortune Knights would be in this position. The first item of the meeting was voted on by the participants again. With almost a unanimous vote, it was decided that the great demon commander would be the expedition commander. The great demon commander immediately stood up and put his right arm in front of his chest, expressing his knight spirit that he was willing to sacrifice everything for the cause of human freedom. The second item of the meeting. Among the remaining knight commanders, 4 would be selected to be the generals, who would cooperate with the commander to manage the expeditionary army in the Great Expedition. In addition to the strength of these 4 generals, what was more important was their own functions. As the decisive gear, they would maximize the potential of the expeditionary army. Among them, the 2 commanders who had just returned a few years ago and represented the highest combat power of the Holy City had long been internally designated as generals. It was also because of the return of these 2 that the Great Expedition plan was confirmed in advance. The first general, Death Alex; the second general, King of Hell, Malone. As long as these 2 existed, the combat power of the expeditionary army would rise by a large level, and they would have the capital to confront the old kings head-on. In addition, the fantasy magic from the Destiny realm would also be an important force to fight against the old kings. It was also the most powerful means of mass destruction in the hands of humans. The commander-in-chief of all the magic forces of the expeditionary army would be the commander of the Sorcerer Knights, who was also the oldest among the current commanders, Jaros Midam, as the 3rd general. Finally, the great expedition was bound to be a heroic epic battle. Injuries were inevitable. to ensure that the wounded could receive the most effective medical assistance in the first place and return to the battlefield in the shortest time possible. The commander of the Scarlet Knights, Shea Cromwell, would serve as the fourth general to provide the most effective treatment and blood supply for the entire army. After the personnel of the one general and 4 generals were determined, an 8-hour discussion took place. Even though there were many commanders present who wanted to participate in the great expedition, the safety of the Holy City was equally important. There were also prophet-type, hybrid demons outside the city. If a large number of commanders were sent out of the city, the Holy City would be in danger. However, at the end of the meeting, one additional point was added. Due to the successful construction of the mobile sanctum, the commander of the Holy Knights, Olivia Christian, would participate in the great expedition as the manager of the mobile sanctum. That was it. The preparatory work on the eve of the expedition had basically come to an end with the selection of the 6 corps commanders. All the special forces had been approved. All the members of the expeditionary army were also classified by the Knight headquarters. All kinds of expedition facilities were ready. The great expedition was about to begin. Chapter 785. Holy City, Civilian District. It was a messy, poor, dirty, and unplanned area of densely packed bungalows. The winding and narrow road was filled with dirty water. A large number of fungi had grown in the overly humid environment. Fungi and mushrooms could be seen in the corners and cracks of the walls, as well as moss plants on the stone floor. Rats with mixed fur scurried around under their feet. However, these rats were still relatively friendly to humans. They tried not to enter the house and instead searched for food in the garbage dump. They also did not deliberately spread germs. They seemed to be very clear that they could survive because humans had built the Holy City. Even the low-level security officers avoided this area as much as possible. They just casually wrote on the investigation report and considered that they had completed the patrol task in this area. At this time, an outsider with a high-collared trench coat completely covered his face walked into the area. A chill emanated from his body. It had no effect on the sewage here, but it could make the residents tremble and dispel the evil in their hearts. He went all the way to the deepest part of the street and stuck to an alley that only allowed one person to pass. Dong dong dong. He reached out and knocked on an iron door embedded in the wall. The partition window opened and a pair of fierce eyes peeked out. The mysterious man in the trench coat outside the door took out a piece of white paper and drew a dagger and fist imprint on it. Rumble. The iron door opened and a passage leading to the underground was revealed. Have fun. The strong guard, who was covered in bags of medicine and relied on drugs to maintain his body, watched the customer go to the secret underground area and then locked the door. Just walking in the corridor, one could hear the voice of desire coming from below. Underground boxing arena, drug exchange, and so on. Some activities that violated the laws and regulations of the Holy City were secretly carried out below. The mysterious man in the trench coat rejected the invitations of several young ladies, drug dealers, and gamblers along the way. After showing his VIP card, he went to the small private room in the deepest part. Such a VIP card directly disturbed the person in charge of the underground area, a psychic with a rat's tail and strength comparable to an ordinary knight. He turned into a black shadow and rushed into the private room. "Sir, why did you come in person?" "I'm here to see someone. No one is allowed to come close to the private room." "Yes. By the way, find a young lady who has just turned 20 years old and is in good health to come to me." Almost done. The person in charge was called Mace. Blackrat. His power came from this lord's gift. According to his understanding, he didn't think that Sir was here to have fun. He hurriedly arranged for a young lady who had just started working here and had yet to officially take up the post to accompany His Excellency. Since Boss Matt had repeatedly told his new little sister to be obedient, the latter was in an extremely unnatural and nervous state when she was heading to the private room. The little sister with brown hair and blue eyes had just stepped into the private room. The mysterious man waved his hand, and the door closed automatically. At the same time, a layer of ice crystals covered the entire room, cutting off its connection with the outside world. The temperature inside the room instantly dropped by 20 degrees Celsius, causing the little sister to shiver from the cold. The next second, the mysterious man looked concerned. He threw the blanket beside him to her and asked at the same time, "What's your name?" Eliza. At this time, the mysterious man also pulled down the collar that covered his face, revealing a handsome face that made his little sister's heart tremble and blush. This person was Demps Martin. "Yes, come and sit." "Oh, okay." When she sat down next to Demps, a flame had already ignited in the little sister's heart. Her fair thighs involuntarily rubbed up and down. "Close your eyes." As if she had been charmed, the little sister couldn't refuse any of Demps's requests at all. The moment she closed her eyes, she had already made all the preparations. However, Demps, on the other hand, was performing some sort of strange ritual. 1. Pour a glass of wine. 2. Grow your 6th finger. 3. Grit your teeth and endure the pain. Cut off your finger with a knife. The cut-off finger immediately turned into a frantically twisting transparent tentacle. The moment it fell into the wine, it immediately dissolved. The process of cutting off the finger was so painful that Demps had to take a special painkiller. "Drink it. Don't resist. If you do well, you will receive a gift." Okay. When Eliza drank the wine, her body immediately turned into a medium, attracting a certain existence from outside the city to directly descend into her body. Crack! The clothes on her back were torn apart. 2 arms grew out from her back and shoulder blades. Together with her own arms, they covered her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Demps immediately lowered his head and called out in a respectful tone, "Mother." The possessed little sister turned her palm that was covering her mouth. The mouth structure had already been transferred to her palm. Many overlapping voices sounded. "You actually met me in such a way. Don't you have a chance to leave the city recently? Nicholas has been very close to the people of the machinery faith recently. It's not convenient for me to take a ride. The great expedition is approaching, and the inspection system at the city gate is much stricter. I can only meet you in such a way. Have you confirmed the target?" "Yes." Demps squeezed out a drop of ink from his fingers and dripped it into the wine bottle. In an instant, the entire bottle was dyed black, indicating the target of the great expedition. "In particular, I need to remind you that we will have 6 commanders on our side, and one of them involves the Saintis. Mother, try to control the following distance of hut as much as possible." "Then Saintis will follow them? Is it really okay for such an important person not to stay in the holy city? Perhaps there is a substitute for the Saintis that can maintain the supreme holy object in the holy city. Interesting. Such a weak human race can actually establish a war with the old king as the target in just 100 years. I hope it won't be a one-sided fiasco. That would be too boring. No, with the presence of Malone and Alex, the great expedition will definitely be a world stage that Mother will be satisfied with. Ha ha. I'm looking forward to it." Just as little brother Demps was secretly carrying out some private matters, a voice suddenly rang out. On Han Dong's side, after leaving the steam city, he issued a large number of resurrection potion production orders to the manor, hoping to meet the demand of resurrection soldiers within a month. It was estimated that the great expedition would officially begin in less than 10 days. However, Han Dong still had no intention of resting. After taking care of some trivial matters, he went to the library, advanced reading room, early in the morning to relax his mind by reading book. He wanted to adjust himself to his best state before the expedition. During the last period of time, Mia was secretly training in the Knights of Misfortune and couldn't leave. While Han Dong was reading alone, he suddenly smelled a different smell. At the same time, the hell-blood skull necklace, hidden in his collar, suddenly sensed something. Chapter 786. Library, Advanced Reading Room. It was one of the highly restricted areas of the Knight Academy. The sealed book collection inside was also unique in the Holy City. Most of the people who came here were teachers of the Knight Academy or members of the Order of Knights who continued to read information. Every time they entered, they had to pay a high reading fee, regardless of whether they borrowed books or not. Han Dong used his relationship with Deputy Director Hera, his identity as a knight, and his first place in the Knight Conference. As long as he paid the fee, he could come here to read at any time. Provistan's Book of the Dead, The Dark History of the Whatley Family, The Death of the Styx. These sealed books, which required one to have their identity verified, sign a confidentiality agreement, and pay a large sum of money to borrow them, were the books that Han Dong had been reading recently. The inside of the books talked about some black magic factions, origins, and derivative stories. At the same time, it also contained some incomplete original pages of unknown origins, as well as the author's interesting personal understanding of black magic. Perhaps because the great expedition was about to begin, there were only a few people in the advanced reading area. Han Dong held the 3 books and found a quiet and relatively empty corner. After flipping through the books for less than 10 minutes, there was suddenly an additional smell in the air of the reading room. A different smell. Generally speaking, most of the readers who went to the advanced reading room were fixed. Han Dong had been here for so long that he was basically familiar with everyone's smell. Just as he smelled this unique scent, he suddenly realized that something was amiss. The dark blood skull, hidden in his collar, also reacted, scaring Han Dong so much that he immediately woke up count in his body and suppressed the dark blood reaction together. Han Dong had never seen such a situation before. Even when he met the Blood Knight, Lucius, only the latter sensed the power of the dark blood, but the skull itself did not have any reaction. A high-level knight of the Scarlet Knights? When he looked through the closely arranged bookshelves, an exquisite woman happened to push the door open and enter the reading room. She wore a black leather corset with silver-white fasteners. She wore a loose black hooded coat. Under the black skirt that just passed her knees, a pair of black silk stockings with ring-shaped patterns was revealed. It was paired with a pair of exquisite black leather shoes. The relatively large hood covered more than half of her face, revealing only a little of her fair and tender face, a tall nose, and a pair of plump lips. The fresh and moist color of her lips didn't seem to be the effect of lipstick. Instead, it was the bright red that this woman carried herself. Her red lips were particularly eye-catching under the pure black color of her outfit. The woman also borrowed a few sealed books. With a rather sexy gait, she slowly walked over from the aisle of bookshelves. Her every move carried a hint of charm. He arrived at Han Dong's desk and slowly sat down opposite him. However, Han Dong's gaze did not linger on the woman for too long. He continued to read the book in his hand, and in a short period of time, he once again immersed himself in reading. That was it. The two of them looked at the books in their hand. They didn't get up, didn't drink water, and didn't do anything else. It was time for the library to close. The gentle melody of the piano pulled Han Dong out of the story world. He subconsciously glanced at the woman sitting opposite him. Since the other party didn't greet him, Han Dong directly packed up his books and prepared to leave. However, just as Han Dong stood up, a voice suddenly rang out. A charming voice echoed in Han Dong's mind. Just the sound alone stimulated the blood in his body to accelerate, causing a stream of blood to flow out of his nose. I have already told Director Reynolds that after the library closes tonight, I will occupy this advanced reading room alone. If you want to continue reading, you can stay here. Okay. Han Dong continued to sit down and read. After a while, The librarian in charge of this area brought 2 fresh steak with blood and a bottle of red wine that was more than 50 years old. This scene was enough to show that the woman in front of him was different. Want to eat something? Thank you. Han Dong didn't refuse. He was indeed hungry. While eating, the woman sitting opposite him finally took off her hood. Under the slightly curly black hair, there was a beautiful flawless face. Han Dong was slightly surprised by this appearance, but he quickly shifted his gaze to the steak. Compared to the woman, the steak was more fragrant. However, just as he cut a piece of steak and put it into his mouth, Han Dong suddenly realized that the woman in front of him was somewhat familiar, but because of her hairstyle, makeup, and aura, as well as his hunger, he couldn't recall it for a while. Soon, he compared it with the image in the depths of his memory. He knelt down on one knee. Greetings, Captain Xiaoya. Oh, you only recognized me now? See no evil, I didn't pay much attention. Also, when I saw Captain Xiaoya at the city gate, your image and temperament are very different from now. I was still thinking about the story in the book, so I didn't react for a while. It seems that you spend a lot of time in the library. Don't be restrained by etiquette, drink with me. Yes, the red wine seemed to have an additional scarlet color because of Captain Xiaoya's contact. Ordinary people would find it difficult to accept, but Han Dong, who had tasted blood wine and watered his talent tree with it, felt that this red wine was exceptionally delicious. In order to avoid awkwardness, Han Dong found a piece of news that he had heard not long ago to start a conversation. I heard that Captain Xiaoya will be going on an expedition as the 4th general. Congratulations! Captain Xiaoya's expression became ugly as she slowly swallowed the steak in her mouth. To be honest, I still want to live for a few more years. After all, at this stage, I'm not really at my peak. Joining the expedition is just the arrangement of the council. Personally, I don't have much confidence that we will be able to achieve our goals in this great expedition. Let's not talk about this for now. Speaking of which, you have 2 unique auras. The first one, I smelled during the Great Betrayer incident. According to my investigation, it should come from the Scarlet Mountain Villa that you and Lucius came in contact with together. There should be a high-level hybrid demon that belongs to the Blood God. He's the target of your lousy seed, right? As for the second aura, it seems to have appeared recently. I smelled it downstairs in the library. It's a king-level aura, not from outside the city, but from the Destiny realm. Am I right? Did you get it yourself, or did Crow or Hugo give it to you? It's a Destiny treasure that I got from the final reward chain event. It's an incomplete item. Han Dong did not hesitate and took out the underworld blood skull, hidden in his chest. For a moment, Captain Xiaoya's eyes flashed with a fresh luster as she reached out and touched the surface of the skull. Blood resonance. Nearly 1,000 books in the advanced reading room began to flip, and the words on the books emitted a crimson light. Immediately after, a red tide poured out. It completely flooded the library. Chapter 787. The red tide poured out from the book and gradually covered the 2 people's bodies. Duchess Shea's thoughts returned from the faraway underworld blood realm, and she realized the seriousness of the problem. She immediately drew a fong and a pentagram mark in the air with her index finger and absorbed all the blood in the reading room. However, the reading room had become completely different from before. Between the books were strands of bright red blood vessels, and even some organ tissues were mixed in. There were also crystals shining with blood on the surface of the wooden bookshelves. The flat tiles under their feet were completely peeled off and turned into an uneven fleshy floor. The librarian who was originally in the reading room was nowhere to be seen. Only Han Dong and Captain Shea, who were affected by the resonance, were left. Under Han Dong's perception, the entire library was emitting a strange blood-red aura. His perception was also limited to the library and could not reach the outside. It was as if the library was isolated. Duchess Shea stared at the scene in front of her and said in a low voice, "Destiny interference. I didn't expect that just by touching it, it would produce such a strong resonance." Destiny interference. Captain Shea, what do you mean? This treasure of yours has a certain level of divinity, a unique divinity that comes from a high-level destiny. Even if you take this treasure out of the destiny space, it will still be connected to the other world. Because of some of my abilities, it resonated deeply with this item. This caused the underworld blood plane to interfere with the space we are in, creating a moment of mixing. It created a sealed independent space. We need to find the exit as soon as possible. As time passes, we will be further and further away from reality. As for the damaged treasure in your hand, let's talk about it after we leave this place. In fact, Shea herself was also very shocked. Han Dong was only a low-level knight who had just graduated a year ago. In theory, it was impossible for him to obtain a treasure of this level. Right, I have to remind you. In addition to the mixing of the dimensions, the underworld blood life form related to this skull will also come here. This kind of high-level destiny space monster is definitely not something a low-level knight like you can deal with. Follow me. Just as Captain Shea said this sentence, buzz, the blood crystal inside the reading room began to tremble violently. Dense blood vessels grew from the roots of the crystal, and through the blood-forming secret text, engraved inside the crystal, they weaved the flesh. Using the hematopoietic secret text to construct the basic outline of life. With the crystal as the node, it was bordered by countless blood threads. In just 2 minutes, 39 blood crystals had been constructed. The strange blood threads connected to their bodies floated in the air in a strange manner. The blood vessels on their bodies could be long or short. As long as one of them touched another life form, it would instantly drain the life form of that life form. Moreover, the crystals in their bodies were the source of energy. In addition to providing rapid regeneration, they could also release various kinds of underworld blood magic. Or they would pounce on him like wild beasts. Or shoot out a large number of blood threads through his physical body. Or he used the blood threads floating on the surface of his body to construct the underworld blood array, summoning skulls burning with red flames to attack the two. At this moment, a long red whip slid out from the sleeve of Xiaoya's black robe. He twisted his wrist. The long whip lashed out. But it was accompanied by a loud bang. In front of them were broken pages, broken crystals, and completely broken blood thread. All the attacks, crystal life forms, and all the facilities in the reading room were destroyed with just one move. This was the strength of a commander. These are just the lowest existences in the other world. Hurry up and follow me. However, Xiaoya was still a little anxious. She was not afraid of the underworld blood life forms that interfered with space. It was just a matter of time and space. If they delayed for too long, they would deviate too much from reality. At that time, they would consume a large amount of blood energy to tear open space and establish a connection with the real world. This would cause Xiaoya to be unable to go out in her peak state. It was precisely because of her anxiety that a fish escaped the net. A half-paralyzed monster quickly recognized the strength of its target. Therefore, it wrapped itself with blood threads and turned itself into a self-exploding blood egg. The egg had 4 long and swift legs at the bottom, and it immediately rushed toward the two of them. Just as Xiaoya raised her free left hand and planned to use blood to suppress the explosion, a terrifying blood shadow flashed past her. The 100-eyed blood dog, which was more than 4 meters in size, opened its abyss-like mouth and covered the egg. The teeth made of nameless tentacles directly pierced the egg and disturbed the detonation source inside. Burp, as the blood dog let out a big burp, the self-exploding blood egg had become a part of its body. It was like a wild dog that had eaten an ostrich egg. It was quite satisfied. Staring at the blood dog that was slowly retreating into Han Dong's back arm, a blood expert like Xiaoya saw the problem at a glance. This is the result of tentacle isomerization? Is this the ability you took from the mantis demon in Scarlet Manor? Yes. You really have to thank Commander Hugo for such a pure mantis demon state. If it was fully publicized in the Holy City, at least 5 commanders would not recognize you. Hurry up, let's go. She pushed open the door of the reading room. The entire library was in a state of interference. The Penrose staircase, which was used to connect the various rooms of the library, became even more complicated due to the spatial interference. There was no pattern to speak of. At the center of the staircase, a giant heart was attracted from the Netherblood realm. Sensing the 2 people walking out of the reading room, many Netherblood lifeforms with suction cups on their bodies immediately crawled out of the heart's artery. Bang! Commander Xiaoya waved her hand. Bright red splattered everywhere, and even the giant heart was completely torn apart. Commander Xiaoya looked at the intricate staircase and could not help but complain. I'm the worst at space. The construction of the library itself contains the technology of overlapping space. Now that it has been interfered with by fate, there is no pattern to be found. Han Dong, who was following behind her, suggested in a low voice. Commander Xiaoya, let me find the exit. This eye of mine and some of my abilities happen to be related to space. Xiaoya stared at the strange eye between Han Dong's eyebrows and said softly, based on the viscosity of the blood here, you have about 3 minutes to find the exit. The interference this time was caused by my mistake. If you can successfully escape, I will take special care of you during the Great Expedition. If I can find the exit, can Commander Xiaoya provide me with the method to repair this skull? There's not much time left. Hurry up and find it. Repairing this skull is not something you can consider at your current stage. However, if it's just a method to repair it, I can provide it to you. Okay. The moment the conversation ended, Han Dong jumped to the intersection of the staircase on the upper right. According to the observation of the little magic eye, the closest point to reality was behind this wall. Then, a void tentacle that emitted the color of starlight grew from the palm of his hand and drew a spatial door on the wall. Commander Xiaoya, the exit is here. Commander Xiaoya tilted her head with a puzzled expression. On her head, there was a question mark formed by blood. Pattern. Chapter 788. Duchess Xiaoya was very clear about Han Dong's uniqueness. His performance in the night conference was also quite outstanding. The experience in the library made her have a new view of Han Dong. He was more interesting than she expected. Exit. Because the 2 were in a space created by the mixture of reality and fate. The library in reality was not affected. The scene that others saw was, when Xiaoya reached out to touch the special necklace worn by Han Dong, the 2 immediately turned into blood and disappeared. Because the exit was drawn by Han Dong through the void tentacles. Its corresponding position was also the high stone wall of the library. The moment they left the exit, the 2 fell at the same time. Because of the effect of crossing space, the 2's brain was also in a state of stagnation. Plop! First, Han Dong fell heavily on the steps of the library's front door. Han Dong had just woken up when a light and soft body with a trace of fishy smell fell on his body. This scene was also coincidentally seen by the library staff passing by. In addition, guild leader Xiaoya did not wear a hood, her identity was also exposed. Then, there were some rumors about guild leader Xiaoya seducing young boys in the library. But the person involved was Xiaoya, the terrifying Duchess. After a while, no one dared to mention it again. Scarlet Knights. It was also a knight group with a special position, originating from the Blood Clan bloodline, which was quite popular in the Fate realm. Most of the knights in the Behemoth Knights were mixed with the blood of beasts. Some of the knights in the Wind Knights and Sorcerer Knights were mixed with the blood of elves. Most of the knights in the Hell Knights were mixed with the blood of demons. Wait a minute. Bloodline, it could be exchanged with points. or in some fate events, completing hidden missions, contacting core NPCs, or through their own awakening to change their personality. The introduction of bloodline was mostly for buffs. Take the previous example, the blood of beasts could give the knights the advantages of beasts, mostly reflected in the ability to move. The blood of elves could improve the senses and elemental affinity, making the individual better at aiming and casting magic, but the physical body would be weakened to a certain extent. The blood of demons gave the individual stronger strength, defense, and adaptability to harsh environments, but the individual was more easily irritable and had a certain tendency to be abused. However, in the Destiny realm, which was based on horror culture, there was no lack of blood clan. Obtaining the corresponding bloodline of the blood clan could turn the individual into the legendary vampire and inherit the corresponding characteristic. Although the blood breeds were divided into different types, as long as they were blood breeds, they all had the same characteristics that were suitable for fighting outside the city. 1. Like to be active at night. 2. It can absorb blood to replenish any energy and heal injuries. Just these two commonalities of vampires were enough to win the favor of many knights. Compared to ordinary knights, knights with vampire bloodlines would suffer much less pressure in the Evernight environment. Moreover, they could reduce the pressure by satisfying their bloodlust. Hence, the formation of the Scarlet Knights was in line with the pressure of the Evernight environment. The number of knights within it could also be ranked in the top 3 of the 13 knight regiments. The first Scarlet Knights were used as a vanguard by the Holy City because of their outstanding ability to move at night and resist pressure. But as Duchess Shea Cromwell became the head, it gradually changed the entire Holy City's view of the Scarlet Knight. Captain Shea's bloodline seemed to be different from ordinary blood breed. In addition to her powerful vampire ability, she also had a powerful medical skill. Perhaps it was related to her interest in surgery. As the Duchess became the head of the regiment, in the name of the Scarlet Knights, many hospitals were built in the Holy City. At the same time, they began to deliberately cultivate some knights who focused on medical treatment in the Knights Regiment. They could use advanced surgery and blood replenishment to quickly treat the injured. Some high-ranking Scarlet Knights could even achieve ultra-fast regeneration of broken limbs. In this way, the position of the Scarlet Knights slowly changed from the vanguard to a knight regiment that focused on auxiliary medical treatment. In general expedition activities, they cooperated with the Holy Knight. Let the nuns first carry out the necessary purification of injured individuals, and then immediately carry out effective treatment. According to the statistics, 5 years after Captain Shea became the head of the regiment, the death rate of knights and trainee knights dropped significantly. When everyone saw some Scarlet Knights in white coats, they would politely add the suffix of Doctor. Scarlet Knights, St. Teresa's Central Hospital, Dean's Office. Captain Shea, who was wearing a white coat, a corset, and a short skirt, was crossing her long legs and staring at Han Dong across the desk and the skull necklace on her chest. There are 2 ways I can think of to repair this damaged skull that contains divinity. Captain Shea bit her finger. Through a special sensing method, she determined the higher plane of destiny corresponding to the skull, and the blood automatically arranged the corresponding English letters on the table. Cairn, Cain World. 1. Enter the original world, go to the base of the Blood Oathkeeper, find the ritual book about resurrecting Loghorn, collect the corresponding resurrection materials, and use the necklace as the core medium to resurrect this demigod in Cain World. And kill it and peel off the complete skull. Resurrect and then kill it and it's still a demigod? Is there any other way? 2. Find the blood god outside the city. He should have a way to restore the skull. I can only think of these 2 methods. After all, this level of treasure is far from what a grade 2 knight like you can have. Han Dong also laughed awkwardly. The 2 methods were basically impossible for him at this stage. Han Dong, who killed and took the Scarlet Manor, if he found Count's original boss, the blood god outside the city, he would probably be killed in a few minutes. By the way, did you really get such a treasure in the first real Destiny experience? Yes, the chain event that started during the apprentice night period. Because I achieved perfect ending. The system gave me the equipment from the treasure chest. How perfect is it? The system said 100%. It's a pity that you didn't choose to join the Scarlet Knights. Forget it, anyway, that scumbag Malone couldn't win you over. I mean what I say, I'll take care of you during the big expedition. If you need anything, just ask me directly, don't go to Malone. Understood, Captain Shea. Tomorrow, the Council will gather all the expedition members at the top of the Holy City to carry out the final division. You can stay here today. I have some things about the Scarlet Manor and the Blood Dog's ability that I want to know. Tomorrow we'll go together. Chapter 789. St. Ophir Central Hospital. Late at night, after finishing their work, the Scarlet doctors and some external nurses left the hospital. They found that the director's office, which should have been empty, was lit up in the middle of the night. They could even hear the laughter of the Duchess, the director, coming from the office. It was this kind of laughter with a special frequency and the delicious smell of blood in the room that attracted a large number of vampire bats. They hung neatly at the edge of the hospital. These vampire bats were not wild. They were kept in captivity by the hospital in the cave behind the hospital as active blood bags. The blood stored in the bats could maintain the highest activity and temperature for a long time. Under the control of the Scarlet doctors, the bats could directly inject blood into the patients who had lost blood. It was quite convenient. It's strange. Usually, the director would have left by this time. There were rules within the Scarlet Knights. As long as they were in the hospital area of the Holy City, they had to address their leader as the director. Maybe the great expedition is approaching. She can no longer stay in the Holy City so leisurely. The director should have invited a good friend to drink and chat in the office to make the final preparations. What kind of person can talk with our leader for a whole night? Who in the Holy City doesn't know the name of the terrifying Duchess? Even the captain can't get along with Leader Syaya like this. Could it be Leader Malone? Rumor has it that when Leader Malone was still studying in the Night Academy, he was 1 year older than the director. Because of Leader Malone's impulsive personality, he was often injured in various missions. The director happened to be able to provide effective surgery and sufficient and gentle blood supply. Although they are 1 year apart, the two of them have formed a special team. At this time, another Scarlet doctor said, however, I heard that after they were promoted to knights, they gradually became estranged due to some things. Their relationship didn't develop smoothly. Later, because Leader Malone went to hell to further his studies for decades, their relationship gradually faded. Then who do you think it is? I don't know. Don't think about it. Knowing too much will kill you. No one in the hospital could stay with Leader Syaya. Who was it? In fact, even the protagonist of the incident, Han Dong, didn't expect things to develop like this. In the luxuriously decorated office, the fire in the fireplace was burning fiercely. The dean's desk had been turned into a wine table, and the documents that were originally placed on the table had been wantonly thrown to the ground. Duchess of Terror, Mother of Blood, founder and president of the Red Cross Hospital Chain Hospital, commander of the Scarlet Knights. Shea Cromwell, who had all these weighty titles, was sitting at her desk without her usual dignified image at this moment. He held the wine bottle with one hand and rested the other on his thigh. She took off her leather shoes, revealing her feet that were fairer and more tender than a young girl's. His face was flushed from drinking too much, and his bright eyes were constantly flashing with an expression of interest. Ha ha! You actually joined forces with Lucius to launch a small-scale war against Scarlet Mountain Villa? And then, how did you welcome the Baron's troops from Scarlet Mountain Villa? How did he defeat Scarlet Count? Hurry up and tell me. Don't leave me hanging." The reason why Shea was so happy was because Han Dong told her the story of Journey to the Aragad Mountains, and a scarlet battle in a storyteller's way. Whenever he heard something interesting, Han Dong would deliberately pause for a while, which also made Shea more curious about the next plot. From time to time, she would gently kick Han Dong's arm with her little feet. Of course, since it was a storytelling, Han Dong made a lot of omissions and substitutions. He concealed his identity as a lord, and said that the assistance of the crowmen was due to his crow physique, and Mr. Black and White's help. The land deed war was also directly omitted and replaced with ordinary war conflict. The more Shea listened, the more excited she became, and she drank without restraint. Although she was skeptical about some details of the war, Shea only listened to it as a story, as long as it was satisfying enough. But when Han Dong talked about his war plan, Shea listened too seriously and put herself in his shoes, and for a moment, she couldn't hold it in. Puff! She spat out a mouthful of wine. "What? You used the cover provided by the crowmen to bypass the Baron's troops, and without any assistance, you arrived at the Scarlet Manor alone to face the mature hybrid demon? That kid Lucius, didn't he come with you?" "Yes, Lucius joined forces with the crowmen and other ground troops to confront the Baron's troops. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for me to have the opportunity to go deep into the enemy's rear." "You? How can you be sure that the hybrid demon won't use the power of the manor to target you, and instead choose to fight you alone? Also, where did you get the confidence to fight the mature hybrid demon at the seed-breaking stage?" Such a crazy and reckless battle even reminded Shea of Malone. Malone was also at the apprentice knight stage, and regardless of the difference in level, he forcefully killed the hybrid demon. Duel is based on Scarlet Count's absolute self-esteem. "I'm just an apprentice knight. If he still needs to use other means to deal with me, it's too much. And I have special means to deal with blood, so I'm still very confident in dealing with Count." At this moment, Count, who felt that his self-esteem had been severely damaged, couldn't hold it in anymore. In his opinion, in Han Dong's story, he was a brainless villain. He forcefully crossed the consciousness layer and constructed a blood dog on the surface of Han Dong's right arm. Then, from the depths of the blood dog's mouth, a bloody human head wearing cone-shaped eye protection slowly emerged and spoke. "Don't listen to his nonsense. How can this kid beat me?" Count could easily crush him to death. Who knew that at the last moment this kid actually cheated and established a connection with the distant crow god through some kind of ritual, borrowing a death power that can restrain blood? Huh! The hybrid demon's consciousness is preserved. Staring at Count's head in the blood dog, the drunk Shea was mostly sober. Since Count's consciousness ran out, Han Dong also conveniently explained that he deliberately preserved Count's consciousness at the seed-breaking stage. The main purpose was to borrow the ability of Count's tentacles. As for Count's network, hidden in the depths of the manor, of course it was kept secret. Shea stared at the Scarlet Count in the blood dog's mouth and whispered, "Only someone with a pollution immunity physique like yours would dare to do such a crazy thing." Since she accepted the setting of Count's consciousness, the next story was told in a two-man show way. Shea listened and laughed, slapping her thighs with her hands. Count slowly became familiar with her. When the story of the Scarlet Battle was finished, Count took the opportunity to ask this high-ranking commander in the Holy City about something that Count was very concerned about. "Hey, is there a knight in the Holy City with superb swordsmanship and proficient in holy magic, Olivia Hall?" The one that Count was talking about was the female knight who once pierced his body with the holy sword. This sword caused Count to be seriously injured and even wander between death for a long time. As a result, she obtained a similar ability of the holy sword. This name, the Hall family? Chapter 790. The first head of the Hall family should be called Fiskett Hall. He was the first deputy head of the Holy Knights and was known as the Silver Sword. At the time when there were not many knights, this deputy head belonged to the rare Holy Knights. After the family was established, they used a unique Holy Swordsman system to strictly cultivate their descendants. Because of the Holy Light system mixed in their bloodline, coupled with the family's inherited swordsmanship, the Hall family has always been sending high-quality knights to the Holy Knights, mainly the Holy Knights and the Lionheart Knights. As for the Olivia Hall you speak of, I'm sorry. Either she's not an elite, or she's already dead. At least, I don't know this knight. The Count, whose head was in the blood dog's mouth, said with a serious face, "No way. How can the people I value not be elites? There must be a problem. At that time, the knights who came to find me were all dead. She fought until the last moment and pierced my body with the holy sword. Thinking back, at that time, in addition to dealing with me, she also had to deal with many blood descendants at the same time. Her body was deeply contaminated, and with serious injuries all over her body, it was difficult for her to survive." "Oh, she's dead. I naturally don't know a dead knight." Count thought until here and quickly said, "Since she's a descendant of a big family, maybe the remains will be buried in a special cemetery in the Holy City. Nicholas, when the time comes, go to the Hall family and ask." "She's already dead, what else do you want to do? Even if it's the remains, I still have to find them. Do you want me to tell you that the reason why I betrayed the original host was because I met Olivia? Since her holy sword pierced my body, my philosophy and ability system have undergone a certain change. Nicholas, you've fought with me one-on-one. You know that as a hybrid demon, I ignored the rejection of attributes and used the true silver holy sword, right? Find her remains, or go deep into her family, maybe it will make me more perfect. Why didn't you say so earlier? You didn't ask. Besides, you're not even willing to lend me your body for a few days. Why should I take the initiative to talk about this?" Han Dong also drank a little too much and directly quarreled with Count. This was the first time Commander Xia Ye had seen something like this. The knight was actually arguing with the hybrid demon in his body. "Ha ha! Let's fight, let's fight!" Xia Ye was also completely drunk. She didn't care about the matter at all. While waving the wine bottle in his hand, he hoped that the Scarlet Earl could separate himself and fight with Han Dong, restoring the theater battle in the story. All right. If there's a chance during the expedition, I'll lend you my body for a while. Is that okay?" Han Dong took a step back. Compared to the dispute, the matter at hand was more important. Intuition told Han Dong that if he could trace the origin of the sacred sword, he might be able to find a breakthrough point. Perhaps he could add another trump card to Han Dong's close combat ability. "Commander Xiao, after the division allocation, tomorrow, will we immediately begin the expedition? There should be a short-term adjustment of the division. It might start immediately or it might wait a day or two. Why don't you go and ask now? I'll personally take you there as a reward for your company tonight. I haven't been so happy in a long time. Is it appropriate to disturb others so late at night?" For a family that focuses on training knights, some of the family members must be training all night. Moreover, night training is often more useful than day training. She left as soon as she said so. In fact, Xia Ye was also very curious. Logically speaking, this kind of sacred sword knight's attributes absolutely restrained the hybrid demons outside the city. Moreover, just like some settings in the movies, the sacred light also had a certain lethality to vampires. Scarlet Count was a hybrid demon with the attribute of a blood clan. In a situation where he was seriously injured and even almost died, he actually controlled the power of the sacred sword and even had the thought of betraying the Wu King in his heart. This matter was worthy of Xia Ye's investigation. She changed into a black coat with a hood. She stepped on a pair of boots with studs. Before leaving, she didn't forget to slide her finger between her lips, making her lips reveal a strange bright red color. She held Han Dong's hand and directly jumped out of the window. In the night, a pair of transparent blood-red giant bat wings formed on Xia Ya's back, carrying the two of them gently to the ground. At the same time, a large number of vampire bats gathered in front of the two of them. They gathered to form a living carriage. Hall family, a high noble, located on the third floor of the sacred city. At night, the continuous sound of swords striking could be heard from the huge mansion. The current head of the family, Barkle Hall, inspected the family's juniors who were training and was about to return to the bedroom to rest. Suddenly, he saw the old butler with a face full of panic. Master, Duchess Xia Ya Cromwell is here to visit. What? The sleepiness that hovered in Barkle's head completely dissipated. Even he, an elite knight, would break out in a cold sweat when he mentioned Xia Ya's name. Why is the terrifying Duchess looking for our family in the middle of the night? Speaking of which, we didn't offend the Scarlet Knight. Did one of the family's juniors cause trouble in the Red Cross hospital? We can't let the Duchess wait for too long. I'll go and greet her first. Hurry and prepare some good wine to entertain the Duchess. Barkle Hall was also an elite knight in the Lionheart Knights. He hurriedly put on the shiny knight's armor and personally greeted her. The Duchess has personally come to visit. I've already ordered the butler to prepare 80-year-old wine from the Red Mountain village. Please come in. I'll just take 2 bottles with me later. I don't need to drink now. Burp. This time, I'm here to ask about Olivia Hall. Olivia. I wonder why the Duchess is looking for my dead sister? When the name was mentioned, Barkle's expression became more serious. My friend was once Olivia's comrade. Due to serious injuries and contamination, she has been locked in the observation area deep in the hospital. Today, she is discharged from the hospital and wants to mourn for her former comrade. Sister's comrade? Sister's remains were sent back by the knights at that time and buried in the family tomb. Follow me. From the Barkle family's point of view, a person of Commander Xia Ya's status would naturally not lie. The moment he stepped into the family tomb, Count in his body felt something. At the same time, Han Dong felt a tingling sensation on his wrist. There was once a silver cross on Count's wrist. It seemed that the feeling was transmitted to Han Dong because he was about to meet an old friend. Chapter 791. The tingling sensation from his wrist couldn't be eliminated by shielding his nerve. This pain came from the Holy Sword. It showed that the ability of the Holy Sword that Count acquired was transferred to Han Dong to a certain extent. Generally speaking, knights broke the seed of evil outside the city by borrowing the chaotic aura in their body to break through the seed coat. The influence and inheritance of the ability generally did not exceed 30%. But Han Dong absorbed a matured hybrid demon and also actively retained Count's consciousness. With the special compatibility of the faceless skull, it was naturally different. After adapting to the tingling sensation on his wrist, Han Dong, wrapped in the bird's beak coat, made a middle-aged man's voice through disguise. That year, if Olivia didn't pierce the body of the abominable blood with the holy sword, I wouldn't have survived. If I was a little stronger at that time, maybe everyone could have survived. His words were full of regret and self-blame, showing his acting talent to the fullest. This sentence also directly caused the head of the house, Barkle, to sigh and began to slowly reveal his inner thoughts. Sister's talent and strength are above mine. In the case where the holy sword was almost ineffective against humans, Sister used pure swordsmanship to achieve the 9th place in the Knight Conference. Moreover, Sister's holy sword is also the most special and unique Sai. Listening to the head of the house, Han Dong was a little puzzled. It was as if the holy sword itself was not a combination of swordsmanship and sacred magic, but a special ability mixed in the blood. Looking for an opportunity, Han Dong continued to ask, "Isn't the holy sword a combination of sacred attributes and swordsmanship?" "No. Every member of our Hall family, whether direct or collateral, has an ancient bloodline flowing in their veins. It is a curse that cannot be removed, but it is also a gift that can help us survive in the Evernight world. When he heard this, Han Dong was not the only one interested. Even Commander Xiaoya was intrigued. The blood in the destiny space? It can be said that the family chooses to keep the matter of the bloodline a secret. However, since Commander Xiaoya will be going to battle as the 4th General tomorrow, and you are also my sister's comrade, I won't hide it. The source of the blood of the sacred sword is our family's ancestor, the first vice-captain of the Holy Knights, Fiskett Hall. According to the records left behind by the ancestors, the old ancestor began to practice the sacred swordsmanship on his own. After becoming an official knight, he entered a large world that accommodated more than 10 teams of fate. Because he violated a taboo, he fell into a forbidden area called the Tomb of the Saint. After passing through layers upon layers of traps, he killed the white monster that existed in the tomb. They found a special secret chamber at the bottom of the tomb. The walls were engraved with ancient characters, and in the exquisite coffin lay a corpse that had been dead for hundreds of years, but still looked fresh. Most of the words on the walls of the ancient tomb were missing. It was impossible to know the origin of the corpse. He could only roughly decipher a piece of information. If he wanted to leave the tomb, he had to select a person to undergo the blood exchange ceremony. Through the ancient device in the secret chamber, all the blood in the corpse would be transfused into the individual. The danger was unknown. It was also unknown if the blood exchange would cause the consciousness to be seized. Considering that the tomb was mixed with a strange holy aura, as well as various words related to holiness, the old ancestor who had the holy attribute at that time was also the best candidate. In a situation where he could not leave the tomb, the old ancestor did not care about the consequences and stood out decisively. The blood exchange was successful. After the old ancestor returned to the holy city, his strength increased dramatically in a short period of time, and even sat on the vice-captain's position 10 years later. Although it may seem impressive to outsiders, but our family is very clear. The sacred blood that exists in the old ancestor's body is actually an endless curse. The council who knew about the situation also issued a ban on our family, forbidding us from spreading this bloodline outside, only allowing it to develop within the family. Blood exchange, the key words were given, and the mystery was solved. Perhaps it was because Count had sucked the blood of the female knight, or perhaps it was because the female knight condensed the most powerful holy sword at the last moment and pierced into Count's body, and directly fused with Count's blood because of the sacred blood. The family head continued, "This kind of blood brings us endless pain. As long as we are not able to kill evil creatures for a period of time, the sacred blood will stimulate our senses and cause severe pain all over our body. This means that the members of our family have no other choice but to embark on the path of a knight and engage in endless battles with the hybrid demons. On top of that, not all of the descendants could carry the holy blood. Premature death is the most common thing in our family." The family head explained until here. Count's consciousness in Han Dong's body jumped out. TCH. How come this Count doesn't have these side effects? But because of the mixing of the sacred blood, this Count's consciousness got rid of the original owner's absolute control. In the end, it's because their understanding and control of blood is insufficient. Han Dong immediately followed up. Then why did you pierce your wrist with a cross to seal this ability? It still hurts, right? Get lost. In this way, Han Dong needed to think carefully. The so-called sacred blood and sacred sword could indeed increase one's strength, and it could also be used to deal with the hybrid demons outside the city. However, Han Dong did not want to carry a burden that he could not unload. Let's take a look first. At the bottom of the family tomb, in a sealed tomb, he saw a stone corpse cabinet with the name Olivia Hall. Count's consciousness in his body had a strong reaction, constantly urging Han Dong to do something. Some clansmen with high purity, blood of the holy sword, flowing in their bodies won't rot after they die. Sister is one of them. Just as the family head stood in front of the corpse cabinet, his eyes were wet. The scene of his sister taking care of him in the past immediately emerged. At this moment, a drop of blood secretly entered the back of the family head's neck. Commander Shea had used a blood control method to make this elite knight completely faint. Nicholas, start your work. Is this really okay? Han Dong was a very upright person. He could not desecrate a corpse without the consent of the family. Listening to their description, the Hall family has obviously fallen into an unknown blood curse. If my senses are not wrong, Olivia Hall, who was buried here as a corpse, has not truly died. Her soul is still trapped in the blood. What you need to do is to help her escape. This is a good thing. Moreover, I also want to see what will happen next. Bringing you here in the middle of the night has wasted my precious time. Hurry up and get to work. All right. In fact, Han Dong himself was a little impatient. The pain in his wrist had reached its limit. When he pulled out the corpse cabinet, a blonde female corpse that was almost no different from a living person appeared in front of him. The blood in her body also flowed normally. Miss Jane. For some reason, Han Dong suddenly thought of an old friend. At this moment, under Count's urging and urging, Han Dong slowly placed his right wrist on it. For a moment, the blood flowing in the female corpse's body like silk threads slowly drilled out from the pores and gathered towards Han Dong's right wrist. It was slowly engraving a bright red cross. The amount of holy blood seemed to be insufficient. Seeing this scene, Commander Shea smiled. If you want to do a good deed, you have to do it thoroughly. Let me help you. She raised her hand. All the corpse cabinets in the Hall family's underground tomb were removed. The holy blood flowing in all the corpses gathered together. Some of the corpses whose holy blood components were sucked out actually showed a relieved smile and turned into old dried corpses in a short time. Holy blood injection detected. Right arm ghoul arm G-virus transformation is evolving. The holy blood flowing from the right wrist could not quickly occupy the body as usual. Instead, it showed a suppressed state and was limited to the right arm. The thing that suppressed the blood was Han Dong's faceless head. Chapter 792. Sacred Blood Corpse Arm G-virus infection. Just as Han Dong was releasing the members of the Hall family from the underground tomb, the Hall family A perfect, holy cross imprint was formed on Han Dong's right wrist. The entire right arm had undergone a qualitative change. So far, the original ghoul arm, green quality, had undergone 2 complete evolutions. The first time, because of the G-virus infection, it was upgraded from green quality to blue quality. The second time was now. Because of the infusion of sacred blood, it was upgraded from blue quality to purple quality, the same level as the left arm. It was because the ghoul arm had such an evolutionary characteristic that Han Dong had kept it. It was just that Han Dong never thought that there would be such an opportunity on the last day of the great expedition. Then again, all of this was thanks to Commander Xiaoyu. If it wasn't for the drunken chat that led Count to reveal the sacred sword, if Commander Xiaoyu didn't personally lead him to the Hall family and pull out all the corpses in the stone cabinet at the critical moment, Han Dong wouldn't have been able to achieve such a perfect upgrade. The moment the Holy Cross imprint was formed, the black vortex on the torso was also rotating slightly, which meant that Han Dong had perfectly adapted to the newly advanced arm. With a wave of his hand, whoosh, accompanied by the flow of blood, a true silver sacred sword appeared in Han Dong's palm. The image of a close combat mage that was originally preset in his mind became more perfect. His close combat ability had another powerful trump card. Moreover, Han Dong would also inquire about the secret of the sacred blood through the Black Tower in the future. However, compared to a normal sacred sword, the sword in Han Dong's hand was a little strange. The next day, the most important division of the army and the departure ceremony of the great expedition was about to be carried out on the third floor of the Holy City, between the thrones. Between the thrones. The front of the eternal castle of the royal family. The huge square surrounded by white Roman pillars could accommodate 10,000 people at the same time. The eternal city, Nutna, operated under the monarch's council system. The king was only a symbolic leader of the country and had no real power. His duties were mostly ceremonial. However, the royal family in the Holy City was not only a symbol of spirit and etiquette, but also a symbol of strength. Even some of the leaders of the Knight Corps were not fully aware of the true power of the royal family. The most familiar one was the Imperial Army, that belonged to the royal family. When a member of the Knight Regiment revealed a unique potential in a certain action, they may secretly receive an invitation from the Imperial Army. For example, Abel Ryan, who had revealed the physique of the Dragon Clan. It was rumored that the 13 knights were the exposed combat power of the sacred city. However, the sacred city still retained a portion of its internal combat power to deal with disasters that could cause the fall of the sacred city. This portion of combat power was hidden within the royal family. Currently, after a good rest, the knights who were full of energy and in perfect condition were rushing to between the thrones from different regions. One commander and 4 generals would also gather in Eternal Castle ahead of time. The great demon commander arrived at the castle early in the morning and was personally received by the Imperial Guard. The aura emanating from the great demon's body leaned towards neutral. It was neither the righteousness of the knights nor the evilness of the hybrid demons. Instead, it was a kind of endless magic energy. Then, Grim Reaper and Malone arrived together. The two of them were not only opponents but also best friends. They represented the extreme combat power of the sacred city and were the most direct force to deal with the old king. In particular, the king's aura emanating from Malone's body even made the Imperial Guard feel as if they were in the scorched earth of hell. However, the Imperial Guard did not show any signs of wavering on the surface. As expected of the Imperial Guard, their quality is indeed different. Not long after the two of them arrived, along with the formation of a light blue spatial array on the ground, the 188-year-old Archmage, Jeros Midome, arrived. Because of his seniority, even the great demon and Grim Reaper saluted the old man at the first moment. Only Malone stepped forward and reached out to pat the old man's skinny body. "Old man, your body is not bad. It seems that you can still live for another 100 years. Do you want to consider mixing into the bloodline of the infernal demons? With your rank, you might be able to get the same Demon King bloodline as me. By then, it won't be a problem for you to live for another 1,000 years." "Malone, mind your manners," Grim Reaper quickly reminded him. "Haha. It's fine, it's fine. The two of you are still the same as before. I'm already very satisfied that this body of mine can persevere and fight side by side with the two of you." Jeros used to be the principal of the Knight Academy. He had watched Malone and Grim Reaper grow up. Now that they could stand on the same platform and fight together, he was quite satisfied. There was still an hour before the start of the conference. Logically speaking, the leading figures should be gathered here, but there was one person missing. As the commander-in-chief, the great demon tore open a mouth on his gelatinous face without a mouth. "Is Shea Cromwell not here yet?" Malone also felt a little puzzled. Strange. Shea should be more punctual than me. In the past, when we worked together, she always arrived early. Could she have drunk too much last night? I remember that she used to drink the day before some major operation to relax herself before. Grim Reaper looked at his pocket watch and directly contacted Shea through the clockwork device. The moment the call was connected, a slightly panting voice came from the other end. Huff, huff. I have something to do here, so I didn't pay attention to the time. I'll be there in 10 minutes at the latest. After saying that, she hung up. St. Teresa's Central Hospital, in a secret cave used to confine vampire bats. Han Dong, whose whole body was covered in sweat, was sitting on a stone bench, drinking a lot of water to restore his physical strength. He was in a state where he was about to be squeezed and collapse. And standing not far in front of Han Dong was Commander Shea, who was holding a bright red long whip. She had obtained a brand new holy blood from the Hall family last night. With the help of alcohol and interest, Commander Shea requested to have a one-on-one sparring session with Han Dong. At the same time, she also promised Han Dong that she would not use her blood level to suppress him during the sparring session, nor would she use any secret technique. It was purely a close combat sparring session. The commander would personally spar with him. There were not many opportunities like this. Although they might be fighting tomorrow, Han Dong still agreed. This sparring session could not be stopped at all. As Han Dong's body revealed one new ability after another, Shea also became more and more interested, so much so that she directly skipped the time for the commanders to gather. Oh no, I forgot the time. Our generals have to gather at the Eternal Castle an hour in advance. Commander Shea, why don't you go first? I'll follow you later. I also said that I'll take you with me. Keep the key to the office for me first. Later, go to my office directly to clean up your body, and use my name to eat something good in the hospital to replenish your body. Come find me during the Great Expedition. Remember to come find me more often. Don't go find Malone. Got it. Chapter 793. This whip really hurts. If it was in the past, my body wouldn't have been able to withstand it. Leaning against the stone wall, Han Dong walked out of the bat cave. But when he recalled the experience the night before, the harvest was comparable to months of hard work, especially the Holy Cross branded on his right wrist. There's still an hour left before the meeting. I'll borrow Commander Xiaoya's office to rest. If the expedition starts without rest, my mental state won't be able to keep up. With the keycard, Han Dong could walk freely in the hospital headquarters. Of course, to avoid some gossip, Han Dong disguised himself as a doctor with a bird's beak. He went to Commander Xiaoya's office as quickly as possible and used the internal private bathroom to wash away his sweat and stains. Why can't I get rid of this fragrance? Is it Commander Xiaoya's special shower gel? Forget it, let's go to Between the Thrones. Han Dong, who was walking in the corridor, was about to leave the hospital. A familiar smell entered his nostrils, and Han Dong immediately looked downstairs. The other party also looked up from the bottom at the same time. Nicholas, why are you here? Even if Han Dong was wearing an airtight suit, he was still seen through at a glance. Standing in the hospital lobby was Blood Knight, Lucius, who fought side by side with Han Dong and was not weaker than him. Compared to his usual armor, Lucius wore a white coat today and seemed to work in the hospital. I was looking for Commander Xiaoya for something. It should be about your necklace, right? Lucius had seen the underworld blood skull in the last investigation mission. It was reasonable for Commander Xiaoya to notice such a special item. Yes. Senior, do you work here? The Scarlet Knights are required to intern at the various Red Cross hospitals for a period of time. Moreover, surgery also helps me control the fine details of the blade. I've always been under Second Corporal, Dr. Langdon Kazdanov. Today, I'm just here to hand over the final work. After all, the expedition is about to start. Wait for me for a while, we'll go together. Okay. He put on the dark red light armor again. The two of them had worked together several times and were both shareholders of Scarlet Mountain Villa, so Lucius didn't regard himself as an outsider and placed his arm on Han Dong's shoulder. However, because of this closeness, Lucius smelled a scent. It was the scent of guild leader Xiaya. You seem to have a good relationship with Commander Xiaya? Han Dong hurriedly scratched his head and laughed foolishly. Haha, it's okay. Because of this equipment, Commander Xiaya personally taught me for a long time last night. You'd better be careful. The title Duchess of Terror isn't for nothing. Got it. Senior Lucius. Outside the hospital, the black war wheel carriage belonging to Lucius's team was already waiting at the door. Senior Zhen and Senior Luanze were already waiting in the carriage. Draw the curtain of the carriage. Let's get down to business. Nicholas, can Scarlet Mountain Villa move with us? Indeed, I can carry it with me, but there are still certain restrictions. Moving title deed is a type of title deed. It can be unfolded at will in the general area outside the city for us to enter and exit. But if we are in other areas covered by the title deed, we won't be able to unfold it as we wish. Lucius nodded. It's quite good to be able to do this. Don't worry. If you encounter some dangerous situation that you can't resist, don't worry. Senior Lucius, you can lead Senior Zhen and Student Luanze to the manor to avoid danger by relying on your identity as the third signatory. If we really encounter a situation that can lead to the defeat of the entire expeditionary army, I will do my best to move the expeditionary army to the manor. Lucius shook his index finger and whispered, No, that's not what I want to ask. If we encounter a danger that even the commander can't deal with, it's useless for us to hide. Nicholas, what I want to know is, you should have prepared a stronger manor guard, right? Han Dong faintly understood the purpose of Lucius's question. Yes, compared to the Scarlet War, we have accumulated more troops, and the lowest-level soldiers have received technical support and optimized training. There are also more soldiers than before. Ha ha ha. I knew it. Kid, your motive for participating in the Great Expedition is definitely not pure. Do you want to continue the title deed war during the Great Expedition? When the time comes, as the third signatory, I will also need to participate in the war, right? Han Dong did not hide it. I do have this idea, but Senior Lucius, don't worry. I will not initiate a title deed war that I am not confident in. Once the war is won, Senior Lucius will also receive the corresponding spoils of war. Don't go too crazy. Think about the big picture. Got it. Outside the throne room, a large number of carriages belonging to various expeditionary army squads were parked here. After Han Dong alighted, he met up with his squad members and walked into the magnificent square. There were more than 2,000 official knights gathered here, and this did not include the special forces that had been developed in the past year. At least, Han Dong did not see Knight Wino Celeste's combat noon. At the front of the throne room, above the 100-meter-tall Eternal Castle, the corresponding eagle-eyed bronze door on the bird's eye view slowly opened from the inside. 1 general and 4 generals. Stepping into the bird's eye view with the posture of a king, he looked down at all the expeditionary knights. The great demon captain standing at the front slowly opened his gelatinous white mouth, and a low and loud voice covered the whole square. Before the great expedition officially begins. Based on each knight's strength, attributes, and related characteristics, you will be organized into 4 different legions by squads. During the expedition, there are no requirements for the different legions. Squads are allowed to move freely within the legions. Now, please line up according to the legions you belong to. As the words fell, the knights gathered here all received the message. The clockwork device worn by Han Dong showed the number 4 through the folding of the copper plate. We belong to the 4th Legion? The Legion under Commander Shea. Did the higher-ups consider that we are still new knights and try to reduce our danger during the expedition? This is good. Lucius and the others are also in the 4th Legion, so it will be easier to deal with unexpected situations. Just as all the knights received the Legion's message and finished lining up. Rumble. The heavy sound of gears rotating, and a violent vibration came from the soles of their feet. The underground machinery hidden in the throne room was operating at high power. Thick steam rose from the ground. A sealed cylindrical metal container rose in front of each knight. Inside it was the power armor prepared by the employer for the expeditionary army. Chapter 794. The volume of the cylindrical metal container was larger than the corresponding knight's body. What was stored inside was the power armor, customized by the Steam City based on the basic information of each knight. Inside the Raven Whisper team, corresponding containers rose in front of Demps, Abel, Wunli, and Mia. Because of the Behemoth Knight's attempt to equip the Wolves of Evernight with special armor, Abel was also looking forward to the armor he was about to receive. Abel also heard from a few teachers that his grandfather seemed to have worked on armor in private. This kind of power armor integrated with technology could not be measured by fate quality. This kind of armor integrated with many characteristics could improve the marching ability of the expeditionary force, improve the overall combat effect, and minimize the consumption of physical energy. However, there was nothing in front of Han Dong. "Nicholas, where is your armor?" Abel asked. "I went to the Steam City in advance, and got the armor in advance." "Steam City? How did you get in? Isn't it strictly forbidden for outsiders to enter?" Abel was a little surprised. Even he had not been to the Steam City. After all, Commander Keeman was a conservative who pursued the wild power of nature. He had a certain prejudice against the Steam Knights who voluntarily abandoned their bodies and nature. "I have a private partnership with Mr. Newton." Hearing the name Newton, Abel's beast ears hidden in his hair quickly stood up. "Congreve Newton. Nicholas, how can you be in contact with just anyone? This is the automaton faith." "Forget it, I'm used to it." Abel was a second-generation official who had lived in the Knights since he was young. He was quite familiar with the big shots in the Knight. Some of the deputy commanders in the 13 Knights had actually reached the commander level and were willing to be adjutants due to some personal reasons. For example, Mr. Black and White of the Knights of Plague and Stalvin of the Knights of Destiny. Newton was a dangerous person in Abel's mind. Commander Keeman also said that Abel should avoid contact with the Steam Knights as much as possible, especially this Newton, the founder of the automaton faith. As the cylindrical container rose, the voice of the great demon captain sounded again. "The power armor is funded directly by the Council and given to the City of Steam to create the most advanced mechanical and steam power technology for each expedition knight. The power core embedded in the armor is connected by the endless energy provided by the patron, which will provide the power supply to cover the entire expedition." Endless energy. Compared to the other knights, who were more interested in their own armor, the knights were more interested in their own armor. What Han Dong was most interested in was this miraculous craftsmanship. If it were his previous world, the nuclear power plant could be changed into a mobile electric power supply device, and it could barely be called an endless energy source. Han Dong could not figure out how the steam energy could be infinite in modern times. The great demon commander's voice continued. "Through your clockwork mechanism, you will be able to pick up and equip your armor. Next, I will give you half an hour to test your armor in between the thrones. Individuals and teams are allowed to challenge each other to a duel. If you find any armor problems during use, report immediately. At the same time, there will be hundreds of mechanical god assistants in the square to check the fit of your armor. If there are any problems, on-site debugging and repair will be carried out. These mechanics from the City of Steam will also participate in the Great Expedition with us and can debug and repair our armor at any time. At the same time, they will also build a communication network for us that will not be interfered with by Eternal Night." As the voice sounded, "Mechanical God Assistance, carefully selected by the City of Steam, appeared at the edge of the square. They were all wearing robes in the form of a gear cross. Their faces were transplanted with mechanical prosthetic eyes that could be magnified in high definition. A large number of mechanical tentacles were grafted, which could greatly improve work efficiency. The automaton Faith is also going to participate? Could it be that Mr. Newton will also participate? As Han Dong turned his head to look around the square for traces of Newton. All members of the expeditionary force had passed the certification and unlocked the power armor. Steam rose, and pieces of flawless armor were revealed in front of everyone. In the beginning, Dempus wasn't too interested in this type of armor. But when he saw the finished product, he showed a faint smile and gave a comment in a low voice. Interesting. The power armor manufactured by the City of Steam was simply divided into the following 4 types. Amplification can increase the physical functions of an individual's strength, defense, agility, and other physical functions while reducing the burden on the body. Technical reduces mana consumption through the mechanical circuit embedded in the power armor. Multicasting can be done through the mechanical tentacles attached to the armor. The mechanical tentacles reuse the excess energy generated by casting spells. The effect is not as good as the spells directly released by the main body, but it does not consume mana. Support has multiple honeycomb structures in the armor to achieve auxiliary aiming, vision enhancement, adaptive propulsion, and other abilities. It can effectively increase the accuracy of archers or mages, and it can also provide perception enhancement to scouts. When an individual is under close combat threat, the honeycomb sensor can capture the trajectory of the close combat attack. Through the microthrusters on the armor, the trajectory of the melee attack can be determined in advance and effective dodge. Do not completely rely on the dodge assistance system. Comprehensive armor designed for some versatile knights with the characteristics of the above 3 types of armor, but the effect is weakened to a certain extent. Sister Wenli, your armor is so big. Inside the team, the size of Wenli's corresponding armor was almost the sum of the other people's, or even more. Its weight was probably thousands of pounds, and only a monstrous knight like Wenli could handle it freely. It belonged to the amplification, super heavy armor, and it also had the iron diamond mark of the Blacksmith Association on the chest, which had the characteristics of power drive and heat resistance. Corresponding to Mia was the technical light armor, which used a flexible metal with excellent flexibility on the back. When Mia transformed into a spider, it could perfectly adapt to the extraordinarily long spider legs on the back, and at the same time provide technical support for the spider leg. It could directly release and amplify witchcraft through the spider legs. Demps was wearing a support type, light armor, and the effect seemed to be quite satisfactory to Demps. As for Abel Lane, the genius who was most likely to inherit Captain Kai Meng's position in the future, the power armor he received was under the personal supervision of Captain Kai Meng. A large number of precious materials were used, a kind of ore that came from the Destiny realm, the dragon habitat. Through advanced smelting technology, a unique metal called black dragon iron was obtained. Combining animal mechanics with advanced blacksmiths and mechanics, the heavy armor was made. But in terms of quality, it was the same as Han Dong's robe, a unique purple color. Heavy power armor o Black Dragon has a special design of the helmet, exposing the eyes and above, and covering the mouth and nose. The material of the helmet was high-purity black dragon iron, embedded with the Dragon Breath seal, which could be used with Abel's dragon physique to achieve the effect of spitting dragon flames. At the same time, it also had a unique dragon tail design, which was perfectly compatible with the dragon physique. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.